Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Voltron Online Podcast. This is the Voltron podcast that we do for Avatar: The Last Airbender Online.com. And this episode is going to be our Season 3 review podcast. And we're recording this one on August 6th, 2017, so just 2 days after Season 3's release. I'm going to be your main host for this podcast, Morgan, Airspeed Prime, site super moderator for Avatar: The Last Airbender Online.com. Joining me on the podcast first is Greg2B from the site.
What's up, everyone?
Also joining us is Kelly, Gemini530 from the site.
Hi, everyone.
And last but not least, I suppose first time on the Voltron podcast that we've done, Harrison, Hyru from the site. Completely forgot the name.
Hello.
But yes, here we are to review Voltron Season 3. So we'll start off, I suppose, because it's Harrison's first time on the Voltron podcast, we haven't heard his thoughts on Season 1 and 2, so we'll just give him a quick opportunity at the start here to give some general thoughts on the first, couple of seasons of the show. So, Harrison, overall, what were your impressions on what we've got of Voltron prior to Season 3?
I really liked it. I had never watched any Voltron shows before or anything like that at all, so was a very new thing, so I was like, sure, I'll watch it, because everyone on the site was talking about it, and the same core team, and so I was like, why not? And it hooked me in, and it was pretty good.
Excellent. So yeah, we'll get into the specifics of things as we go through. But yeah, we'll jump straight in with what we've tended to do at the start of these podcasts, which is obviously cover the fact that this is a Netflix show, and we get all of the season at once. The different thing this time out being that from here on out, we're going to get much smaller seasons, basically half seasons. So this one was only 7 episodes. We did get them all at once again. But the difference here is that we know that Season 4, basically the second half of the season, is coming October 13th. So it's not too far away at all. And that's pretty interesting. So I'll go first and just say that, overall, I actually really liked just getting 7 episodes. Just them kind of, I think as well, announcing the date for the next batch, like the day these episodes came out, was a really cool thing to do. Immediately got people excited for what was to come. And then in terms of actually covering it from a fandom perspective, I do feel that having 7 episodes to go off, especially with the quality of these episodes, I felt like it's actually a good thing to do going forward for speculation within the fandom. And just, if it really, as they say, does help them to get more episodes out quicker doing it this way, I'm kind of all for it. I don't really see too much of a negative. Maybe the end point of this season was a little odd, but I think it works as a speculation point, given that we know we're going to get more episodes in just a couple of weeks' time. It obviously is kind of a season split into 2, but it feels like an okay temporary endpoint, that we're not going into a huge hiatus now. But Kelly, overall, what was your viewing experience like for this shorter season of Voltron and the new format that we have now?
Yeah, I actually fairly liked it. I pretty much agree with what you said. I sort of liked it because I was up at 3 a.m. waiting for it to air, so I don't think I would have been able to I don't think I would have been able to make it through to 13 episodes. I probably would have started spacing out or getting really tired, but I felt like 7 was just the perfect amount that I could get through for someone who would wait until 3 a.m. until it airs, as someone on the East Coast. So it was worth it for me to do that. And I like it that we got a release date immediately. I was shocked by that. You know what? I didn't even stay through the credits, the season 4 teasers, at the end of the 7th episode, and I didn't even notice. I had to go on Tumblr and realize that. And the fact that we already got a release date, I think, is really cool of Netflix to do that. And that's probably maybe why they did this split thing, is that they feel like they can give a confirmation onto when the next batch are ready and have less of a wait. At the same time, I still think it's a little weird. I'm not in love with the idea, because then it makes a show a little weirdly inconsistent in regards to how they split the seasons. For example, we know that the next season is 6 episodes, so it's we know mentally that season 3 and season 4 are season 3. So it's it gets confusing. I guess I'm never a big fan of disparity between the actual production's view of what a season is and what Netflix's view of what a season is, and I feel like Netflix's disconnect on that has always been really frustrating, because I don't know how to collect these story arcs into like a proper format, because they end in different random parts. Even season 1 felt that way when it ended on that cliffhanger that they all got separated. In the end, I actually feel like season 1 and season 2 is like one big 26 episode season, like an anime show. But I mean, now we got even more split and more split. So I mean, by no means am I like hating it. I don't think it's like a terrible idea. It's just something I'm not in love with.
Definitely. But Greg, what are your thoughts on the format this time and your viewing experience for season 3?
I mean, for me personally, I think it was fine. I don't mind, the new 7-episode format. I mean, I think, I don't know, the whole viewing experience in general is like so different than what it sort of used to be, that I just sort of, adjust to the way that the new arcs are going. I mean, as long as it doesn't feel like too awkward, like I definitely do get sort of Kelly's idea about season 1 and season 2 sort of feeling like it should be more together, just because of how it's more like introductory versus like, the later part of the story. So I don't know. For me, I mean, the 7 episodes, it was fine. I mean, originally I actually had thought of just watching like the first like 3 or like 4 episodes, because I think I didn't watch it, but I saw you, Morgan, post like your episode 1 through 3 recap on YouTube or whatever. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll just watch like the first 3, and then I'll just like take a break, and then Saturday or whatever I'll watch the rest. But of course I just wound up just watching all 7 straight through. So I don't know. I mean, it worked for me. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it works with their quote unquote season 4, and see if it would have flowed better all together, or if it works as 2 separate sort of entities. But for me, I mean, the way that it ended with the whole sort of like history sort of flashback sort of episode, that sort of worked for me, as far as knowing sort of the backstory, and knowing that there's still a lot more to come. So for me, it worked.
Yeah, like the end point this time around worked out really nice, because it does kind of make you go like, oh, now that I have this information, how does what's come before kind of have new context, and how do we then view what's going to happen with this in mind? Definitely, like, going forward, like whatever season 5 is and how that like ends, if that doesn't have as good of an end point, like, it definitely could feel pretty weird. But Harrison, what was your viewing experience like? Your thoughts on the new format that we have here for Voltron?
I really liked it, because for the first 2 seasons, like, I didn't watch the whole first season when it first aired. I like watched the first 2 episodes, then just stopped. Not because the show was bad, just because other things came up or and stuff like that. So I finished watching it like later on, and then season 2 was already out by that point, so I was able to just kind of cruise on through, and which is nice and all. But for this, like, it makes it really easy just to keep being caught up, because like that's kind of a problem with me, is with all like the Netflix shows, when they all drop it all once, like a lot of times I don't have time to just binge watch the entire season all the way through. Like, I can just do a few episodes here, a few episodes there. But with these being, 22-minute episodes and only 7 for the season, it wasn't difficult at all for me to just binge watch all of them throughout the weekend. So it worked out nicely for me, because if there was 13, I definitely wouldn't have been able to finish the season, by the end of the weekend for sure, just because with time constraints and all that. So I definitely liked it a lot, and also just because everything felt a lot more focused with the, I guess, shorter season, or half a season, however you want to look at it. So I think it worked out for the better, and I liked it a lot. So I don't have any huge problems with it.
Yeah, it definitely took away a little bit of the like race to watch the full season, to kind of get involved in the episode discussions with the fandom. It didn't feel like that was as big of a thing, with like people saying like no spoilers, because it felt like 7 episodes, most people realistically can watch that in a day or 2 and it's fine. So that's probably another little factor. But yeah, we'll move on, and before we get into major talking points, getting into the spoilers, we'll do our just general thoughts on the season overall here to start things off. Overall, I was really, really impressed with season 3. Season 2 I found to be relatively disappointing. It had its good parts, of course, but there were definitely some, I think, weaknesses with season 2. This, I felt like, really kind of showed me that the show, it actually can execute on some of the criticisms I had for it with season 2. Episode 7 really delivering on a thing I think a lot of fans were waiting for, and then just how they approach doing a lot of the like results of season 2, what happened to it with the changing of the lions and like who is in what position, the introduction of a new villain. It was all, I think, tackled a lot of the issues that I had with season 2 of like Zarkon not being a very interesting villain in season 2. Now we have this really interesting character in the lead, and just all this other stuff going on. It felt like it added a lot of complexity, resolved a few things, but still kept open a lot of things. So it was, it's successful in terms of just our first half of this overall bigger season, but while still leaving stuff for season 4 to do, and that there's obvious setup for stuff still to come. So overall, I was very happy. I didn't have any like major complaint with this season. It's just, I think, a lot of the little ones that have been kind of lingering for the entire run of the show, like this character hasn't got as much of a focus as this character. Things like that are, I think, the only real lingering issues for me throughout. But Greg, overall, what were your thoughts on season 3?
Overall, I thought it was pretty good. I mean, I think, the whole major sort of, I guess, story arc and new introduction to new characters, for the most part sort of worked for me. I think there was only maybe sort of like one episode or one part of an episode that sort of, I don't know, it wasn't really like a major issue. It just had me sort of question sort of the timing of it. But other than that, I think most of, all the episodes, they flowed well. All the action was cool. Of course, as always, the animation is, very good. So no, most of the story bits and the way that they sort of work with most of the characters, I think for the most part worked for me. There's just a couple things that I guess I just have questions or just sort of curious to see what they do with the future with them.
Mm-hmm. Kelly, your general thoughts on the season?
Yeah, I really liked it. I a lot. I think it was a major. I agree with you, Morgan. I think it was a major improvement over season 2, despite being shorter, because I rewatched season 2 before watching season 3, and I actually looked back on it and I was like, yeah, this does have more problems than I remember. You know what I mean? Like, I still enjoyed it so much, but in the end, it felt like things were happening so fast. You didn't feel like you got a sense of the direction the show was trying to take in regards to its villains and its characters. So for it to kind of recreate itself here in season 3 with Lotor and the lion ship, but also be really well, I think for the most part, really well paced in that new story, and how they're setting everything up, I think was a major improvement. And it, all the other stuff is just as good as ever. But I don't know. I feel like the show kind of found its footing a bit here, more so than I felt like it did with season 2. So I'm looking forward to what it does in the future because of how much more. I don't know. I think I've pretty much made my point. I loved it. I thought it was great. I just have 2 fairly major complaints, but then other than that, I think it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And Harrison, your general thoughts on the 3rd season?
Basically the same as all you guys. I really liked it. I thought it was great. The shorter season gave it a good focus and pace, so it knew what it wanted to accomplish with these 7 episodes, and I think it did it fairly well. And episode 7, of course, was amazing, and so I just thought it was great. The only, I guess, downside that well, not maybe the only downside, but one of the downsides that I definitely noticed looking back on it is that with it being shorter, we don't get a lot of maybe character-focused episodes that you would get in a normal longer season. This is mostly just main storyline stuff. We'll save, the character stuff for when maybe it needs to be relevant or whatever. So that's the only thing that I kind of would have liked more of, is maybe a few episodes here and there of just character focus, but in a shorter season like this, you can't really do that so much. So it's kind of a trade-off thing you have to do. So I don't know, but it was definitely a very good season, and like all you guys said, an improvement on season 2. So I thought it was very well done.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're now going to get into full spoiler talking points here. The way we're going to do it is we're just going to go around. We'll start with me, and then we'll have each of the hosts bring up a talking point, and we'll just discuss it, and we'll attempt to, over the course of various trips around the table, basically cover every point about the season. So I'll start us off with basically our opening talking point of discussing our new villain, Lotor. It's not the very first thing that happens in the season, but it's the first thing I want to focus on because I feel there's just so much to get into with the different like changing of positions with the lions and stuff like that. I want to just focus on Lotor, as well as we get the introduction of his team here as well. But I suppose the first talking point here is just his like initial introduction. We see him here in the kind of Galran fighting arena here. We focus a bit on this guy Commander Throck initially, and he's basically planning to like take over from Zarkon. He feels that like there's no leadership and they need someone to take over. He's planning this kind of behind the scenes kind of coup almost, and then it's revealed that one of the characters fighting in the arena at the moment is Lotor, and they kind of talk about him like, oh, he fights on the front lines with his troops. His whole kind of inner circle is made up of like half-breed Galrans, and they don't like that because most of the Galran Empire is like all pure breeds. And they just, as well, they bring up the idea of like when he conquers places, he lets them rule themselves. And so they present this very different picture to like Zarkon of who Lotor is, and immediately we're kind of like, oh, he's honorable as well. He's immediately challenging Throck, who he knows is going for this position. I was really impressed with just how much more interesting he felt than like any villain we've had in the show up to now, because it almost made you question of like, okay, a lot of that stuff seems like okay. If he becomes leader, do we have that big of an issue with the Galran Empire? He doesn't seem that unreasonable. And then with the idea that like, oh, he was banished as well, but has just been brought back. Like, what exactly happened here? So I was immediately impressed with him and what he brought to the series. But Harrison, what were your thoughts on the introduction of Prince Lotor here?
Yeah, I agree with what you said. Like, he was very like interesting character right off the bat. And I like how they did it, where we just have these two characters just in the odds that we don't really know, that are just talking, and then it has the reveal he's actually the one fighting in the arena. So I thought that was really just interesting and well done, and not something you would, I guess, typically see like in just a show normally. Like it's a very interesting way to introduce a new character, let alone a new villain. So I thought that was very cool, and just to see a little bit more of the Galra side of things was definitely interesting. But yeah, he as a character was like, yeah, hearing all this stuff, like, whoa, wait a minute. Is he a bad guy? Like, maybe if he, becomes the head of the Galra Empire, maybe, he can steer in a better direction and stuff like that, and maybe he and the Paladins can work together. I have all these thoughts going in my head of like, well, where do we go from here? If he sounded pretty good and everything like that, and so yeah, it was very, very interesting just right off the bat immediately, and I was like, okay, I'm interested to see who this guy is, what his story is again, why he was banished, and and all that stuff, and why they brought him back and all that. So I'm very interested to see all where he came from and everything like that, and just how everyone feels about him in general, because he is so very different from Zarkon, but it's very interesting, and I just really, really liked it immediately, because how could you not like a new interesting villain like this that's so drastically different from Zarkon? It's just very, very interesting and well done, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to much more Lotor in the future.
Yeah, and he also does, I suppose, present that kind of manipulative side, and that he kind of, with his team, later reveals that actually he kind of presents a different version of himself to the people than he does like in private, where he is a little bit more kind of cruel, in that he has Throck immediately like sent off somewhere else and is immediately planning this stuff. But Greg, what were your initial impressions of meeting Prince Lotor?
Initially I think he definitely is presented as sort of an interesting sort of villain who's pretty much the opposite of his his father. He goes about things, or at least in public, like you mentioned, he goes about things in sort of a different way, which I think is pretty interesting. I mean, I don't know, his introduction and everything, I think it was cool. It wasn't anything sort of too crazy to me. I mean, as soon as they sort of were talking about him in the back, I'm like, okay, so that's just gonna be him there in the arena, and they're gonna have the whole challenge thing, which I don't know, it seems kind of typical, but I like the way that they did it. It definitely was interesting. It definitely, he was easily able to sort of, present himself to the, to the people, to the army in a way such that, he would be able to command them and wouldn't have, anybody, at least directly sort of challenge him. The other guy that Throck was talking with, maybe he'll come back in the future and they'll have, some sort of, issue with him or, some other sort of character. So, his rule, probably won't be completely, perfect up until maybe later on. But he definitely seems like an interesting character. I mean, just the fact that he's younger and has a different view of ways of doing things, makes him seem interesting and adds, definitely a new sort of light to sort of, the Gara Empire and just sort of how they're going about doing things in the future. And, with him being banished, as you guys said, it definitely makes him interested. It makes you, just like you wanted to know Zarkon's sort of history and backstory, which, we get in this season, it will be definitely really interesting to, get, Lotar's history and everything like that.
Yeah, just like the simple thing of just him kind of prioritizing loyalty and getting the people he takes over on his side versus just ruling over them, I think that's an interesting angle in and of itself. And that's always the thing with the kind of standard villains, your Ozais, your Zarkons, of just like, do you not see the problem in just like relentless rule like that? But Kelly, what were your thoughts on the introduction of Lotor?
Yeah, I really, really liked it. I mean, I wish I didn't see the fact that he was the guy fighting coming, but I did because I seen the preview clip at New York Comic Con a while ago. So it was nice to see him turn around and it not be a cow. So that was funny if you know about that preview clip. That was the April Fool's thing. But it was really, really good. I agree. I thought it was very unique that it was a conversation between these two Galra we don't know, and then it leads up. And it's kind of exposition-y, but it feels so natural, you know what I mean? Because they are people who are interested in taking over the Empire themselves, so it makes sense to why they're talking about it. And then it turns out they're talking about the guy who's fighting in the arena at that moment. That was a really cool idea. And then I didn't expect Lotar to challenge him like that. I was like, oh, okay, now we're getting there. So the actual fight was good. I like what I like about Lotar. What we've seen so far is that, like he said, he's good at manipulating the masses. He's kind of good at manipulating us, because when I was first watching that scene, I completely believed him, But what instantly made me go, oh, this is going to be interesting. This is going to be a good villain, is when he steps out of the arena and says the masses are easily manipulate him, send him off to this random planet, let him rot in the ice. You're like, oh, okay, I see what you're about now. You may have these ideals, but you're not as accepting of these people who may be against you as you say you were. You know what I mean? By saying, well, as long as they're good and they can fight and they're technically pledged loyal to me, then yeah, everyone's going to get their piece of cake. You know what I mean? But he's like, yeah, no, that's not the case. I just need to say that so that I get more people on my side. And I thought that was super cool and super, I don't know, I really like this villain immediately better than anything with Zarkon. I need to find the Black Lion. You know what I mean? Like literally all he was in season 2, which was really annoying. But now that we know the backstory, that's a little bit better. But super. This villain is super cool, and so is his entourage. I like how they were secretly in the audience and they cornered him to have that fight. I thought that was a really good idea.
Yeah, so we'll stick with Lotor to get into some of the more depth on him, and that, of course we get the usual things of, he's a skilled fighter, he's a very skilled pilot, which we learn later on, but we learn that he's a very good tactician as well, and that he just, he spends his early time in the series kind of just testing Voltron to see what level they're at after the fight with his father, and then we begin to, towards the end of the season, kind of get into this idea of, okay, he's testing Voltron, he's clearly our villain here, but now he's kind of attacking his own facilities that he shouldn't have to attack himself. He just has control over them. So he's keeping stuff secret. He has his own plans, separate from being the leader of the Empire, that he doesn't want anyone within the Empire to know about, stealing the Teladav. Prior to the series, the idea that he sent one of his team on this mission to get the Skulltrite lenses, and he clearly has this overall bigger plan. He's done some level of research into the whole idea of the comet and the interdimensional kind of material that Voltron's made of. All this sort of stuff is really interesting about him, that we end the season not really knowing what his overall aim is really, and that okay, he still wants to keep the Empire going, but he's got this other mission that he's not really telling everyone about, and then just with the context of the last episode revealing the history in mind, it's just kind of like, okay, they clearly state that he's Zarkon's son, but Zarkon's also like 10,000 years old at this point, and not because he was in stasis. And like, is Hagar his mother or not? And all this sort of stuff is just like, why was he banished? Like, there's a lot of backstory mysteries with him as well, of just like, why was he out of the picture, and why is he now back in the picture, and what's he been doing all this time? But Kelly, what are your thoughts on where they went with Lotor for kind of the rest of the season after his introduction?
Yeah, I still think that was very strong. I agree there's so much backstory we need to get into, especially like the mother thing. Like, is Hagar his mother? Like, I don't know. I would argue that maybe yes, because we find out at the end of the season that Hagar kind of forgot all of these things. But then she did like the mind thing and was like, oh yeah, that's a thing. So maybe I don't really know, because like she wasn't acting like a mother or anything to Lotor. She was just like talking to him or whatever, like a person. So who knows? But like, as for the other stuff, I'm really intrigued to see what's going on with him fighting against his own people to get what he wants. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't surprise me too much that he's doing that, but I'm surprised that he's doing it to such a scale that we as an audience sees it as a mystery. Like, what is his plan? You know what I mean? What is he trying to do? As for like the other stuff, what else he's able to do and what his plans are doing. In the second episode, I really like how the second episode starts with the invasion of the town of that one guy who was just questioning how things would go since Voltron can't be formed, having him be captured and him being like, please spare us. And he's like, well, yes, I mean, if you work with us, we'll protect you. Everything will be fine. We'll let you rule. Like he's doing that thing again, like what he did with the in the first fight. But at the same time, it feels like that. But it's also like intimidation as well, because I'm gonna call her the Ty Lee one, because she's like Ty Lee from Avatar. She kind of like is like, you know, making the guy smile. It's like, you're on our side now, you know, like kind of like they're forced to do it, but they feel like there's this sense of control and choice within them, even though that's not the case. I think that's a really interesting take. It's kind of similar to Azula, actually, if you think about it. Azula would often do that, make you feel like you're making a choice when you're not, you know. So I don't know, like I think he's just incredible. His writing, his actual, like throughout the whole season, like his written dialogue is really smart. I would say one more note on that, because there's just so much to talk about with him. I'm trying to keep it brief. I say that with this, it's smart because I really like when they're in battle. I really like what he's analyzing. Like when the four girls are saying, okay, so this is the thing, or oh, the black line's here, or this is here now, and this is here now. They're keeping analysis on the things. I like his observations on what's going on. Like, all right, let's draw them out a little bit more. Like, he's not like some ruthless, like, all right, just keep fighting. And but at the same time, he does have offense. You know what I mean? When he's like, all right, shoot a laser at that guy. Like he's so chill about it. But at the same time, you can tell he's really thinking, and there are moments where he's actually surprised. He's like, oh, so the black line is back. And he's like not happy about that. Like you can see that he's like, oh, that's not what I expected. But even so, he's able to be a step forward anyway. Like he gets surprised about something. Like, you know, like he doesn't show like shock or anything, but you can tell when he's like, oh, okay, all right, that's bad. That's not what I was expecting. And then he just easily breezes over it, somehow makes a step forward, and it works out, you know. So I think that's what's most intimidating about him. He can take anything that's thrown at him and somehow be another step ahead, and that's what's so cool about his character. That's what I'm excited to see, what's finally the thing that throws him off, you know what I mean, like completely throws him off. So I don't know, I'm really looking forward to seeing more of this guy.
Greg, what are your thoughts on the rest of Lotor? You know, his personality, his goals, his plans, backstory, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely a lot to him, as Kelly has sort of indicated. I mean, I think he definitely is, you know, sort of a master sort of tactician, just, you know, how he goes about doing his battles and how he sort of, you know, every sort of like, you know, fight that he's in, he at least, you know, has an idea of how it's going to go down or how to sort of approach it. Like he's able to sort of, you know, key in on sort of what lions and what pilots don't necessarily seem to be, you know, gelling with each other at, you know, whatever point in time. I mean, I really like the whole point where he makes note of Allura sort of like learning how to use her line during their sort of battle while she's being chased around. So yeah, he's definitely really interesting, and I think his history will probably be, whatever it is, whenever we get it, hopefully it'll probably be just as interesting as Archon's, if not more so, just because of what is his actual sort of lineage and sort of where does he actually come from. I mean, he seems to be sort of around the same age as most of our other sort of characters, so how long has he been around, sort of like where has he come from. I think it's definitely sort of interesting to sort of wonder these sort of questions about him, and sort of what will happen when Zarkon does come back into the picture, like how will that whole sort of I don't know, relationship sort of go down. I think that could be really interesting, well, as in, if Hagar is his mother, or just sort of how that whole thing sort of works in sort of the Galra sort of empire. I think it definitely adds another level of interest to the show that we didn't quite have before, that I think is definitely going to help it out as the seasons continue on.
Yeah, and Harrison, your thoughts on like Lotor and the rest of the series, basically?
Yeah, he was great. Like, just he as a character in general was just so cool, and like Kelly said, to see him in battle, just like the way he like did things again, like so calmly, was just very interesting. And throughout the whole season, like I got vibes, like Kelly kind of already mentioned this, but I kind of got vibes of Azula, and also kind of like Thrawn from Star Wars Rebels season 3. Like I just kind of got vibes from both of those two villain characters in Lotor, which I thought was really cool because those are two pretty good villains in my opinion. So it was just really interesting to see how, and just also just testing the paladins, just almost kind of like playing with them just to see what they're capable of. Like, okay, we haven't seen all the lions yet. Why is that? Then he starts pushing things around. Like, okay, well, okay, they're all out now. Okay, well, things are off here. Like, I like how he immediately can recognize that the paladins are different. Something's different about them, and they're not the same team that took down his father. So I thought that he's just very interesting and intelligent villain, and it makes it such a challenge instead of someone that's just this, evil overlord bad guy like Zarkon was. It was just interesting to get this really new and like fresh villain. It is just really interesting to see the way he worked and stuff like that. And then his team, who like I just referred to them as Lotor's Angels basically in my notes because that's just what I thought of. But like they're just such a cool little group of characters. Like Kelly said, there was the Ty Lee one who that's how I refer to her too, because that's what she is basically. She even has like the little head tail thing for like a braid, so like it fits perfectly. And so like they're also just cool, like how they have their own strengths and weak and stuff like that. And like there's the buff one, there's the shooter one, there's like the kind of assassin kind of one, and then the gymnastics one. It's just really interesting group of characters here, and just to see them in action is always just interesting to see how they work and learn more about them. So I would just love to get like a whole episode just dedicated to their backstory, like what we got at the end of this season, just to see, who Lotor was and why he was banished and who his mother is. Because, like, yeah, is it Hagar? Is it not? Like, I don't know. It's one of those things that's hard to tell because, he himself doesn't look like he's full-blooded Galra, so maybe Hagar is as well, because we know that she's all tan and all that, so it's all kinds of crazy stuff like that. And then also with like seeing him being like not having a full breed by the looks of things, just judging off his look, he forms a team of people who also aren't full Galra, which is very interesting in of itself, and how a lot of people like look down upon that. So I would just love to see the origin of his team and what they did before he was in charge and things like that, and what people thought of them and stuff like that. So it's really interesting stuff, and like just good villains all around. And just every time they were on screen, I would just love seeing what they were up to and what they were doing. So I mean, yeah, some of the just very good villains.
Yeah, so I suppose the last thing on Lotor is his kind of team here. So I definitely like, it's that weird thing that we bring up sometimes in the Movers podcast of just like, I wish they'd introduced them a little bit like clearer and like said like, oh, here's this character, here's their name. Here's this character, here's their name. It was kind of just like they randomly said their names when they were all in the same scene, and it was just like, wait, who are you talking to here? And stuff like that. But eventually we've kind of managed to form the name. So our red-skinned acrobat Tylee person is Azor or Izor. The blind cat psychic person is Narty. Our kind of buffer, kind of weapons expert, who kind of seems to be the one who kind of controls the ship stuff, is Zethrid. And then the person Keith met in the past is Oxia, I think is the pronunciation, but I'm not really sure. I think the subtitles gave her like 5 different spellings of her name, so we don't actually know. But she seems to kind of be the second in kind of command of the kind of group here, and obviously for a lot of people the most interesting one, because we saw her in season 2 in the Weblum. I think it's really cool that they all have their unique abilities, with the whole like acrobatics, martial arts for Ezor, the kind of psychic connection stuff with Narty, which is kind of interesting given that that's kind of how the Voltron and the Paladins work, you know, with their lines, as a kind of psychic connection. And we have that, and it seems like Hager's cat is kind of Narty's kind of animal that she brings around with her, I think. I'm not sure if it's meant to be the same one or not. And I think they say at some point that she's blind. And then, you know, Zethrid, you have the kind of big weapons expert. She's probably the least interesting, but she's still cool. And then the Oxia as like the main one is kind of like interesting, just because she is kind of like the second in command, and just to know what she's about, and that she almost looks like half human, half Galra. That would be like my interpretation almost of kind of her, kind of, if she is a half race of Galra, that would be my interpretation. So the speculation obviously is running wild about like, oh, is she Keith's mother, or is she too young to be Keith's mother? And the whole continued issue of like, it's really hard to judge ages on this show for the most part. But Kelly, what are your thoughts on Lotor's team that he's formed here?
Yeah, I really like them. I mean, I guess you could argue they could have been a bit more fleshed out, but there's just so much that needed to be done this season that I don't think it's a huge issue, and it's not like we're not going to see them again, you know? So I really like what they've done so far. You could argue it's the whole, like, give them all the basic personality traits, and, you know, here they are, and that's their team. But at the same time, I actually do really like their writing. You know what I mean? I don't think it's as simple as just this one's strong, this one is like temperamental, this one is super happy all the time. Like they occasionally have lines that aren't like just exploiting like that personality trait of them. So I really do like their like dynamic, their teen dynamic. I don't think that's the same cat. I think that's just the same species of cat. Although they could have done something to maybe like give the cat a name so that we knew that it wasn't the same cat. I think I'm pretty sure it's a different species. I mean, a different cat. It's the same species of cat. But I really like that one's abilities, because like they have no face, but like they're so cool because of what she can do. You know, that I don't know. That's just a really cool ability to have. All of them, I like how they all have unique abilities, because you can tell that's why Lotor has them on his team. He doesn't care what like race or half race you are, as long as you can fight, you're really good. And I imagine what makes these characters special is that they were also banished, or they were never even like there in the first place because of their being a half breed, right? So basically, what is that noise? Oh my God, is the TV that loud? I'm sorry, just cut that out. I can't believe the TV's playing it that loud upstairs. Okay. What was I just saying? I'm sorry. I guess the one that's a little bit the most generic is what's her name? The one that's the strongest, that pushed that bull out of the way. Zethrid, like she's kind of your typical like, we gotta fight, you know, like that's a little bit like not the smartest writing, but I mean, what are you gonna do? I do like the part where she's feeding the cat like with the thing, and then the cat takes it away from her at the end of the scene. Like little things like that I appreciate in this type of show, in shows in general, is the little things going on in the background while you're watching like the main plot. It reminds me of like Momo or whatever, like from Avatar, like those things. So I'm glad that they still do that. As for Oxia, I feel like a moron for not realizing that was the person from the past until episode 6. Like when Keith had the flashback, I was like, oh my God, of course, you're wearing the exact same outfit as that person. And I was like, is it Matt? Is it Lotor? I was still theorizing, and then it was like so obvious it was her. I don't know. I felt really dumb afterwards. And then like the actual scene where their swords are clashed and they look back at each other, they look incredibly similar. Like they have the same mouth, they have the same like nose and eyebrow shape, even though Keith's eyebrows are like a bit thicker. They have to be related. Whether she's a mother, I had someone on Anon message me that maybe that she's a sister, like that, like maybe because they're brother and sister, they can work together to find out their origins or something. That's a possibility. That would be interesting. I personally still think it's probably his mother, but because she looks a bit older. She doesn't look like she's like the same age as Keith, you know? I'm pretty sure it's possible that she could be the mother, but it's still really interesting, and I'm looking forward to that. At the same time, I felt like we didn't actually get a lot of her character here. Like, even though she's like the second of command, she was just kind of saying the most like simple, like, you know, commandish stuff without really getting into personality. Other than like she kind of seems like a loner, ironically, which is like what Keith is. Until we get to episode 6 and how she's going to be in trouble for messing that up, for messing that part up. And I also like how she in episode 2 said, "Don't kill anyone, keep the prisoners alive," and like her like, what's the thing? She used this like cool weapon where she captured those people in like a diamond force field thing, and that was really cool. So I'm thinking she's like very merciful. Like she's like the most merciful of the team and like the least evil-ish, which is making me think, okay, yeah, she's gonna switch to the good side with her son and her brother. You know what I mean? So I need to see more of her. I want to see more of what they do with her. I'm excited for that. The other 3, like, yeah, they need development too, I guess, but they're just kind of gonna stick as the badass, you know, Lotor's angels for now. So yeah. With
Asya, it's kind of difficult to judge her age. Like, yeah, she looks a little bit more mature than maybe some of our other teenage characters, but not quite enough that she'd have like a 17, 18-year-old son, perhaps. So it's kind of a weird one. They could go either way with it, honestly, just because we don't see her like personality or speak a lot. I kind of would have liked to have seen more of like maybe her reaction to like seeing Keith again, but you know that would probably have given away too much, and they want to keep it back for now. But Greg, what are your thoughts on Lotor's team here?
I think like you guys, I really enjoyed seeing them on screen and seeing them sort of interact with each other. I think they definitely have a interesting sort of dynamic of how they sort of work together and how they work underneath Lotor, which I think definitely, adds interest rather than, Zarkon and his sort of forces. And yeah, we had a couple of, sort of generals or commanders that sort of, stood out here and there, but it's nice to have, probably a set of characters that we'll see, sort of reoccurring and that have their own sort of their own sort of stories and own sort of personalities that sort of can possibly or hopefully be sort of expanded upon in the future. So I think for the most part, most of them were pretty interesting. I mean, maybe a little bit generic just because of how they're introduced here in such a short amount of time, but I think they definitely have the potential at least to sort of be expanded upon and become more sort of interesting or more sort of like major sort of minor sort of characters that we see here and there, and can definitely have, they definitely add something to Lotar's sort of team and his sort of rule in general, just that he has these set of people that, he actually sort of talks to and sort of interacts with other than Zarkon, who, generally, other than maybe Hagar, was just sort of given orders all over the place. So it's interesting to see how this team of, I guess, villains actually work together. So it's definitely something that I'm looking forward to in the future.
And Harrison, do you have any thoughts on his team?
Yeah, I already went into it a little bit, but yeah, his team, is really cool just to see all the different personalities kind of working together and things like that. Like, yeah, we didn't really get much of a like introduction as far as who they are as characters and things like that, and that would have been nice. But I mean, that first battle we see with them, like overtaking a town and stuff like that, that was really cool, and seeing all of their different weapons and styles of fighting and all that stuff was cool. The girl at second in command, she was really interesting, and like I didn't like think of it at the time, but like maybe there is some sort of connection between her and Keith. Like, again, I didn't know that was the person that Keith had saved in the giant worm from last season until he had the flashback also. So don't feel too bad, Kelly. And
okay,
so
thanks.
And yeah, it would be interesting if they were like related somehow to see if she was like half Gaul or half human too, and she just got a little bit more Allura, and Keith had just gotten more human, and that's why they look like themselves. So it would be interesting if there's some sort of relation there, or maybe she doesn't have any relation, but just because she's half human and half Allura, and same thing as Keith, they can kind of make a connection that way or something like that, or just the fact that he saved her. I don't know. So there's a few things there that can go with that, and so it's just interesting to see where that's going to go, because it feels like it's, and just the way they're doing it, it definitely looks like it's going to go somewhere. I'm just not quite sure where they're going to go with it, but I am very interested to see what's all what basically. And then the blind psychic one was really cool. Like, I like how you saw that she uses the cat. I mean, I think it's a girl. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell, I guess. We don't really know if she doesn't have speak or anything like that, but all the others are girls, so I'm assuming this one's a girl too. But just how she like looks through the cat, can see with the cat's eyes, like that's really cool. And I want to find out more of like the boundaries of her abilities. Like, can she do that with any animals, or does she just have a connection with this cat and things like that? And then how she also later on in the season, when she almost like, when they were invading the base, how she like kind of almost took over that guy's mind and like mind controlled him basically. That was really cool, and just like interesting to see just what all her powers are and the extent of it and everything like that, because like all the others, like, yeah, they use weapons and their fighting abilities, but this is like an actual, like, I guess almost sort of superpower in a way, like how she's like psychic and like mind controlling. It's just really interesting, and I want to like see her use more of it to find out the boundaries of it and things like that, and all that kind of stuff. Like, was she born with it? Like, I just want all this information on her. I think she's probably, to me, one of the most interesting ones, just because her powers and the way she fights is just so interesting and different from all the others, and it's not like a fighting style, but she still fights like with her tail and everything like that, so that was really cool. And then I'm not really going to remember the names, but the Tylee one was just, it was cool just to see her, like fighting and stuff like that, and it was nice to see how it wasn't, for the most part, except for maybe the strong buff one, that they weren't just defined by their character traits. They were actual characters that just happen to be one that's acrobatic and maybe a little on the happier side, but not what she is all the time, 100% of the time. So it was definitely nice characters to see, and I always like seeing them interact and stuff like that. So I mean, and then the buff one is just the over aggressive buff one, which like I'm not upset about, because almost every single team of characters you see with different traits, there's always going to be the one that's the big, buff, strong, aggressive one that's the weapons expert. And, there's nothing wrong with that. There's a reason there's that kind of character almost on every single one of these teams. Like, it's a simple one, and it works. So, I mean, yeah, maybe it doesn't quite fit in with how well the other ones are written, but maybe they'll get to that later. So I don't really have a problem with it. So I just always love doing there's a team of different special, like, ability characters, and they're all just working together, and the fact that it's just a group of villains under Lotor, who is just another interesting villain, like, it all just adds to the cool factor, if you will. So I just thought they were great, and yeah, I love them.
Yeah, and the final thing I'd just say about them is just I'm kind of wondering, like, are they setting up this, it's now 5-on-5, 5 paladins, Lotor plus his 4 is 5. Is he building up to, like, he's trying to make his own Voltron-like thing that can, transform, and the 5 of them are working together? Because when they introduced Lotor, they said that one of his unique things is that he fights with his, teammates, and that's not what the Galra usually do. They usually sit back and command. I'm kind of wondering if that's the direction they're taking. It seems like the ship that we've seen already is like a 2-person fighter. Maybe they'll only have like 3 parts, like Lotor gets his own ship, and then it's like and then two-person ships, and they kind of form into something. That would be cool, because it gives you the opportunity to over time, like, set up like potential rivalries between the groups, in terms of like, okay, Lotor and this person were like multiple rivalries, and that Lotor and Allura as like the kind of princess of their respective nations is an interesting one. Keith and Oxia with the potential connection, and see where you go with the other ones. Probably the red skin gymnastic girl, and Lance probably seems like the natural way to go with that, and you can sort of see the way they'd approach doing it. But I'm definitely interested if that's the direction they're potentially taking it in, that they formed a team to basically create a evil Voltron team in a way. But we'll move on from the villains and Lotor. Greg, what's your first talking point?
Sure, I guess I'll go with one of my points. And I guess this is, I don't know if it's necessarily negative, but I guess it's just something that I sort of question, and it's sort of the only sort of real sort of downside to me. I don't know, for me, it was interesting sort of how they brought Shiro back. And I know there's like, tons of theories and sort of, extra sort of, I guess, sort of reasons behind that. I'm sure you guys will go into that more than me since you know a bit more about that. But for me, just episode 5 in itself, I don't know, for me it seemed, I don't know if it seemed out of place, but it just wasn't something that I sort of was sort of expecting right off sort of the back, just sort of how they brought sort of Shiro back into the team. I think, I don't know, for me, for some reason, I was definitely thinking that it would have taken them a bit longer to sort of have him sort of come back. Like I was definitely, I don't know, for some reason I was in it more for sort of the long haul rather than him sort of, coming back, near the end of the season. And not that he's fully sort of integrated sort of back in the team, but it's, other than the fact that he's not sort of leading, in the actual Black Line, he's pretty much, for the most part integrated back into the team. So I don't know, I thought that was just interesting and I wanted to get your guys' sort of opinions on that.
Yeah, like it was definitely interesting going through the, on Netflix, like finish episode 4, which in itself was kind of like, that's an interesting episode. And then immediately like the summary for the next episode comes up as it's loading, and it's like the journey, like Shiro makes his way back to the group, and like, oh, they're doing this already, just immediately Shiro's here. Definitely it's a little bit of a weird one, but then I think part of what you're meant to take away from the episode is that it's kind of meant to be this kind of weird thing. You're meant to like look back and really question everything about this episode, like these weird inconsistencies, the fact that like he has all these headaches, these little visions as he goes on, the people he interacts with are acting kind of weird, and they even allude to this kind of like Project Curon, and like as he's literally escaping, they're like, phase 3 has been activated, and just like, wait, what's going on here? And just the fact of like, he's already escaped from a ship before. You'd think they'd be aware of that and like have extra security on Shiro in case he needs to escape. So there's all those sort of things that you immediately make you like question it, and especially I think watching it like a second time, which I did like just before we did the podcast. It's like, yeah, you question a lot of things throughout the episode, of like little things here and there that are said, like just the fact that the two people he encounters just happens to have like a band that serves the only purpose of like making his hand not change form, and like, how do they know his hand changes form? Did they see him doing that just before they arrived, or what? Like, so there's all of this stuff, and it leads to the obvious, is Shiro a robot? Is Shiro a clone type theories? And is he this sleeper agent that they're going to do some stuff with? And is he real? Is he not? And that's, I think, really interesting to take away from this episode. It's just, you don't fully know, because you can make points either way. Like, he is a clone, he is a robot, it's the real Shiro, but like he's been changed or altered in some way to where he's not the exact same. And that's an interesting way to do it, to not just like have him come back and immediately he takes up his previous role in the team. It gives like a reason to like have him take on a slightly different role and us kind of question if it's really him or not. So yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a weird one in that like it does, like the positioning of it as like episode 5, right in the middle of all this alternate reality stuff, the middle of the Lotor plot, is a bit weird, but I don't mind it massively, because I think just in general we kind of needed a lot of bigger episodes like this, where you just like are just pulled along by all this action and big stuff happening. But Harrison, what were your thoughts on episode 5, the Shiro episode, and like the timing and just the mystery, I suppose, surrounding it?
I kind of agree with Greg. I felt like it was kind of too soon. So like I didn't get to see the description. Netflix just sort of played it automatically, thankfully. So when it started, I was like, oh, Shiro? Okay, this is interesting. Like I thought, we were going to at least have a whole season with maybe nothing of him, and maybe at the end of the season we get like a little tease of him or something like that, of what's going on with him. So I was definitely surprised to see him. So it was, and I wasn't all that happy. Like at first, just the initial thoughts, like when I just saw him before anything started really happening, I wasn't happy with it. Like I know I don't want Shiro to come in yet. Like I wanted, just the team to be by themselves and kind of do their own thing and become a sort of successful team by themselves, and then maybe bring Shiro back, see what happened with him and all that stuff like that. And so I was not all that happy about it, but I was like trying to be open about it, see okay, like well let's see what's going on. And at first I thought maybe it was some sort of like flashback to when he was originally captured, like before Voltron, like before the series started and all that stuff like that. So maybe this is like a big old flashback. So that's what I thought it was at first, because like his hair was long and he was captured or whatever. But then as we were going, like, oh no, this isn't a flashback. This is present time. So then I got all confused and had to like refocus and rethink things. And so it was interesting to say the least, and all the different visions that he was having as he was like escaping and what he was seeing. Like you see him like it looked like it, but maybe not. I have to rewatch the episode again, but it looked like as he's walking by a hallway, he looked at the room and he saw like another Shiro. And I don't know if that was him actually seeing another Shiro or if he was just having a flashback to when he was captured. So that was kind of the thing that I'll have to rewatch just to see what was going on there. So it was interesting, and also, yeah, when you think about it, it's like, why is Shiro just on this one kind of random ship that's in this random place? Like, you would think if the Gora had actually captured him, Hager would have him on the main ship and be like, interrogating him with like her dark magic or something like that to try and figure out, what Voltrons do, how to infiltrate them or something like that. But instead, he's on this one random ship where, they know that he can escape before, like you guys said. So yeah, it was like the more you think about it, the more things don't add up, and just the bigger the mystery gets of like what all is going on here. Because I feel like one of the main things that really shows that like maybe this isn't the same Shiro like, physically and all that, like that he's robot clone, however you want to go with it, is that there is no way in the time that he was captured to now that his hair just got that long. Like not that much time has passed. Like come on now, like that was the thing for me. Like there's just no way that his hair just grew that fast. Like I just find that no, because Pidge, is a girl, so like the only reason she kept her hair short was to be disguised as a guy. So I felt like she would have grown her hair out too, like with time passing. So I feel like that was one of like sort of the main visual clues, but they don't ever say it. It's just there for you to pick up on it when you do, because like I know like they say that some time passes, but like for his hair to get that long, that would have to be like at the very least a year, 2 years or something along those lines, depending on hair growth and all that. But so that was definitely one of the things for me that definitely threw me off in the beginning, was like there's just no way. And then also just seeing him on the ice planet at first, like again, like I didn't think anything of it, but then like hearing what all you guys are saying and stuff like that, and I've been like going back and thinking on it, and yeah, it doesn't add up, and those characters are weird. So kind of want to go to what you said, Morgan, in your episodes review on YouTube, is like maybe this is like a test for Shiro clones to go through, and if they make it through all this stuff, then they are they're a clone that's passed the test, and so they send him on his way. And if not, maybe they just shoot him and kill him and start over. So it is kind of an interesting thing, because like why are there these like rebels out there, and yeah, how they know that his hand turns into a weapon and have just these special clamp, like they say in the episode, like, oh, it's the only like clamp we have. So like they have this one very specific clamp for this very specific reason, and it just happens to be for this dude that just randomly stumbles onto their planet. So that's also an interesting thing to note. So yeah, like the more you look back on it, things don't add up. So it is like, so I'm definitely leaning more towards this is like a clone or a robot or something's going on here where this isn't the same thing. And there's a lot more going on with Shiro and Megara that we did not originally know. So it is kind of interesting. So I wasn't all that happy with him coming in at first, but I'm on board now just to see where they're going to go with this sort of mystery clone robot arc that we're on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel they had to do something with Shiro, I think sooner rather than later, just because his disappearance literally was like he disappeared. Like there was nothing to go on for like why he disappeared. There was no real speculation to have about like why he just went like that. So I felt like you kind of immediately had to almost give some sort of explanation and not just leave it as this like cold case of just Shiro just he literally vanished and that's it. It just felt weird if we went like an entire like 13 episodes or something like that with Shiro's just vanished and he's still gone. I like that it was only 5 episodes and we're like, oh, he's back, but is he back? And I think that's a better way to do it. And when will the cracks begin to show? Will anyone suspect him? That's going to be interesting going forward. But Kelly, what are your thoughts on the Shiro? Only 5 episodes in, and they bring him back in a way.
Yeah, I was really shocked by this. I remember when I finished episode 4, and Netflix is that thing where it moves up to the top. The credits moved to the top left, and the next image was just Shiro with long hair fighting, and I was like, what? I was so confused. I was taken aback. And then what happened was watching it, I actually thought the same thing as Harrison. I'm like, is this now, or is this a flashback to when he was first escaping? I was getting really confused. I was like, wait, this makes no sense. But no, it turns out like that was really this Shiro escaping or whatever now. And when I was first watching it, when he was first back and he was saved at the end of the episode, at the end of episode 5, I was like, yay! I wasn't happy about it. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like on the fence. Like I kind of get what you're saying, Morgan, about like I'm glad they didn't keep it like this super long. We don't know what happened for like a whole 13 episodes. I get that, but at the same time, we still don't have any answers. It's not like we got any answers from this. They don't even know themselves. Okay, so yes, obviously he's like a robot or a clone or something. Rewatching it again and seeing all of the signs, it's really fascinating, and I'm really it's so interesting to see like this new type of plot develop. I think that's a really cool idea, and it suddenly makes sense to me why Shiro's back so soon. That being said, I'm still not happy he's back so soon. I really think this could have waited a couple episodes. In my opinion, because we just had the team starting to gel a little bit together in episode 4, and even then, episode 4 was like a bombshell of alternate realities and development on like on the original stone that was Voltron's made out of. And you're like, oh my god, I kind of wanted like a few episodes like more as a team getting together before we bring in this new Shiro subplot. I'm much more happy now that we know this. We clearly know this Shiro is a fake or something, or he doesn't like. And I don't think that this Shiro knows he's a fake. I think that's another huge tragedy here, is that this clone of Shiro, this robot of Shiro, thinks that it's Shiro, but it's not, and it's probably a sleeper agent that's going to end up destroying them from the inside or something. Yeah, so I do really like this idea, but at the same time, I think it could have waited just a little bit longer. It's bothering me, but it makes me feel like it's rushing again. It's the only part of the season that I felt like it was doing what season 2 was doing, and that was just like moving things on to the next thing really fast. Because I don't know. I know I'm probably in the minority on that, but like when I was first watching it, I was really upset that Shiro was already back. I'm like, you're already back? No, I don't like this, but I knew something was off too. I was like, that doesn't feel right about this at all. And then rewatching episode 5, you're like, oh duh, that's not even really Shiro. Like even I really looked into it, and like you can even tell that the two aliens that find him on the ice planet, like I think that was their job, was to test out this robot and see if it was real. And by the way, the reason why I think this Shiro, this Operation Chiron guy is a robot and not a clone is because in one of the flashbacks, when they're like doing a test on him, when his pupil, like when you look at Shiro's pupil and his eye open and closes, it's literally the sound of like a camera retinal. Like it's like and you're like, oh my god, it's so obvious he's a robot. You know what I mean? They're calling him Subject, this code name. It's not the same one as his prison name from the first episode of the show. And it's like you hear the robotiness of the pupil. So I think it's more of a sleeper agent robot clone. Maybe it's like a bio robot, like it's a mix of a human and a robot. it could be both, but clearly it's not Shiro, and I think that's a really cool idea, except I think they made it a little obvious. Now that you watch it again, you're like, oh wow, this is clearly not Shiro, to the point where it's a little ridiculous, and it should have happened later. That's just my opinion. I think it happened too soon. We just got the team gelling together, and now they're getting all confused again on who does what, and I don't know what this means for the future of the show so far, so yeah.
Yeah. I suppose for me, I think for me, I find more potential in the idea that rather than Shiro just being missing for like potentially a few seasons, that we just have Shiro's back acting a little bit weird for a few seasons, and then they just activate whatever is actually the plan here, and then that be the thing that we almost maybe forget after a while. Like, they don't do anything with this for a while, and it is just like Shiro's back, we sort of have it in the back of our head that there's something up, and then like season 8 they're just like, boom, here's a thing, and
that would be crazy, like, but that would be really cool.
I just see like a lot more potential in that than just he's gone 3 seasons later, here he's back, and here's what he did. But you know, definitely depending on the person, you could go either way with it. But it is definitely one of the more interesting things to come out of this season. I don't think anyone really expected them to go down this road, because it doesn't really seem like a Galra type plan to do, and as well as that, we don't really know like who's in charge of it necessarily. Like, is it a Lotor project? Is it a Hagar like Zarkon project, or something else? Because they say it's like from command, but then there's a whole debate about like who's really in command. Is it Hagar from the home base, or Lotor who's kind of going around the place? So that could be another factor in things. And yeah, just the fact that they are doing something so like, yeah, like experimenting on humans to get inside Voltron and kind of potentially take them down from within is very interesting. The only other point I'd bring up with this before I kind of bring it back over to Greg for his thoughts is just the only thing that makes me in any way doubt that it's like a clone or a robot is just how this Shiro is found, and that it is the Black Lion sensing Shiro that actually finds him. And if it was a robot, I suppose I don't, maybe it's just me putting a lot of faith in the fact that they've always kind of established that like when a lion makes a decision, it's this like big thing where like they don't really get it wrong as such, that like it's this, you can trust the lion's decision. So it would feel a bit weird that like, oh, the Black Lion didn't realize it was a robot. Like, it feels a bit weird to kind of say that, which kind of makes me lean more in the direction of like, it is actual Shiro, it's just changed kind of Shiro, and that maybe like the Black Lion knows it's real Shiro but doesn't know exactly what's going on, so doesn't let it be piloted by him right now. So that's maybe the direction I'm leaning in, but I can definitely see like a place for every single theory basically on this kind of style of thing. But Greg, you brought up this talking point. You kind of mentioned, I think before the podcast, that you kind of haven't really been seeing a lot of other people's reactions just yet, so you're kind of a bit unaware of all the kind of crazy theories going on now. But now that we've discussed them a bit, where do you lie on this whole issue of what exactly this Shiro is or isn't?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely interesting hearing the theories and getting a little bit of a understanding of, I guess, what people's different views on it really is. I think it helps the fact that there is something bigger going on. Because, yeah, I mean, I know you can tell, even if you don't see all the signs, you can tell that something's just sort of off about this Shiro, or just sort of, just the fact that he came back so quickly, even if it wasn't sort of like a story sort of, oddity or something like that. It's just, it just seems off. So I think the fact that something in the future hopefully will sort of come from this, where they do some sort of big reveal if he's not Shiro or some other type of Shiro, I think that will definitely help the placement of this. I mean, it's probably one of those things that just like right now, since this is sort of one of those weird sort of half season-ish things that this is the one episode that doesn't quite gel with the 7-episode sort of streak that they have here, but it'll make sense when we get the next sort of 6 ones. So I think that will probably help it out for me personally, as far as him just sort of coming back so quickly. Otherwise, it definitely it just seems, I don't know, there didn't seem any sort of lead into this sort of reveal reveal of him sort of coming back. I mean, despite, the episode itself wasn't bad. Like, I think it was interesting how he sort of, was able to escape, and how, there's so much mystery around it. And even the two, random dudes that are helping him out, they like sort of question it. So just, I don't know, there definitely is, a lot of sort of inconsistencies, like you guys have sort of mentioned, that sort of, make it interesting and sort of odd at the same time. So I don't know. I mean, the team so far has done pretty good job on, most of the storytelling, that, I can't see it going for too long without it being resolved in some form or fashion. So I'll probably just have to sort of wait a bit, but I think it definitely is interesting to see all the sort of theories. And this is probably for me one of the most sort of interesting sort of, I guess, individual things about this season, rather than just a whole overall story arc of where everything is potentially sort of going.
Yeah, no, I think stuff like this is another reason why I like that we kind of just had the 7 episodes for now, and we have the next, like, whatever, like 8-9 weeks to like speculate on stuff, and that like come a few weeks time after everyone's had a chance to rewatch the series 4 or 5 times, the theories are going to be like really detailed. We're going to have like a lot of really clear theories with a lot of evidence behind them for what exactly is going on here, and depending on if they commit to doing any sort of reveal in season 4, it's going to be cool to see those theories come true or not, kind of like the Amon mystery from Korra Book 1. But yeah, we'll move on. Kelly, what's your first talking point?
Okay. Let me think about this. Okay. I guess for me, I feel like we should probably get into the shifts of the lions, but that's such a broad thing to cover that I don't want to do it like as every single one of them. Like, so I guess I want to actually start with like kind of in order of how it happened, Keith now being in the Black Lion and everything, because like that I think is like my second kind of iffy thing about the season. Not iffy, but like I want to talk about it because I both really like it and I both am really bothered by it based on like episode 3, but like yeah, let's just talk about that.
Yeah, I like that they approached it like this, and that like the immediate start of the season was that Shiro's missing, everyone's sad about it, but Keith very clearly is like the most like outwardly upset about it. He's the one who doesn't want to give up the most, and given that he was literally told by Shiro that like if anything happens to me, you're a leader of Voltron, he's kind of keeping this from the team because if he revealed it, it kind of solves some of the problems initially, and he's kind of in a way forced to become leader in this case. He's the last one to try his hand at, basically going inside the Black Line and activating it, and they kind of establish once again that he's previously piloted the Black Line. He was allowed to pilot it to save Shiro back at the start of last season, so there's a lot of stuff going for it, and I like that they, for the most part, they had everyone try it out, but for the most part you knew it was between Keith, Lance, and maybe Allura had a shot because, as she explains, her connection with her father making Voltron, there was always the opportunity that she might be the one to fill in that role, but it turns out to be Keith, and I like the initial kind of moment of how he does it and how Lance eventually does come to accept it and how that kind of solidifies his place. It's just, I think after that, like I don't feel like they write Keith as the kind of like struggling leader all that well. It feels just a little bit too frustrating when he's making these decisions.
Yeah.
Like, especially the stuff in episode 6 where like it's not that complicated of a battlefield. It's just like you have to defend yourself while also taking out this thing, and Keith is just like mind blown by the fact that he has 2 goals in this mission and he just can't comprehend it. I feel there was a way to write yourself around it without like Keith just being like, no, you told me to do this thing first, I have to do that, I can't take anything to mind. And I like that Shiro later on kind of says to him like, you gotta learn how to choose your battles before you become a strong leader. And equally like kind of Kelly alluded to there, episode 3, kind of similar thing of just like, no, we gotta keep going, and then at the last moment he's like, oh no, we'll retreat now, when arguably he should have made the opposite decision since they had the advantage. But you get the idea that was meant to show some level of growth behind it. I think they still have a ways to go with Keith as leader, and I hope they write it better going forward, because I can get behind the idea. I just feel like I need a little bit more of this, because the whole like Lance potentially being the right hand of Keith is a kind of cool idea, and some of their interactions that they have are actually quite like interesting, in that they kind of begin to form that relationship into the kind of next generation of kind of like Alfor and Zarkon, which was interesting. It's just, yeah, Keith as the leader was a bit weirdly written this season for me. But Harrison, what were your thoughts on them making the decision here? Keith is going to be the new pilot of the Black Line, and how they approached him as leader of the team.
I was initially pretty excited because that was one of the things, who's going to pilot the Black Line and all that after the end of season 2 and all that. So I like how it started, like it was kind of like a thing where they're not sure who's going to do and stuff like that. And they all had, tried to do the Black Line and it didn't respond to anyone. So, and I liked how Keith was reluctant. And he's like, he didn't want to be the leader because, that's, usually what you see, the reluctant leaders is a bit of a trope, but it's a good one when done well. And, at the beginning of here, it was done nicely. And so I liked how he was the one that was reluctant to do it, but then the Lion responded, so he didn't have a choice. It was he was the leader now, so he had to accept that. And so I was excited because I was like, okay, cool, like Shiro had sort of set this up and things like that, so I liked it. And then kind of with the whole bad leadership stuff, I didn't feel quite right for his character. I mean, you can do like him making mistakes and stuff like that, but you can do it in a different way. Like I did like how he had to get used to the way the Lion moved and the different mobility of it, because the red one's a lot faster than the black one, and the black one's also bigger. And so that was nice. I like how he had to figure out a different way to sort of a different fighting style, basically, because this Lion is just so different from the other ones. And so I thought that was interesting. And so that made sense as far as why he was having trouble and stuff like that. But as far as calling like shots and what they should do and what they shouldn't do, he did feel just like over like aggressive and frustrated and angry with in season or in episode 3 and stuff like that. Like he just wasn't sure what to do and things like that, and it just didn't feel quite right. Like really, he doesn't know like maybe what to do or anything like that. Like he didn't learn anything from the way Shiro led it all. Like I would think he would at least know. Like it would have been nice to see like maybe his mistake was to try to be too much like Shiro. Except he wasn't like Shiro, so he wasn't doing it right. Except here, he was just, making bad decisions, which I did. It was just, I don't know. It didn't quite feel right to me. Like I would have, like it just wasn't written the best, like you guys had said. So it was an interesting thing. And then in episode 6, I really didn't like the whole Shiro undermining him while he was leading the mission, and him also be like, like just their back and forth they had while they were in the middle of a battle. Like, come on, guys! Like, you guys are better than this. Like, don't have an argument in the middle of a battle about what you're supposed to do. Like, I don't know. It didn't feel right because like, okay, Keith has a mission, he's doing it. And then Shiro changed the guy, and then it frustrated Keith, and Keith was saying no. Then it didn't feel right for the characters for Keith to just sort of have a goal. Well, wait, we have to do this over here, but he's still going for over here. And then he finally changes his mind. But then when he does, like, oh no, we have to change it back. But then he's like, no, I still have to do this now. And so he's I don't know, like there's just the way they're like, okay, the goal of the battle is to do this, and then the goal changes because the battle changes, and Keith doesn't respond immediately. Like, I don't know how that, like, how did he not get that and stuff like that? And so I didn't like Shiro undermining his leadership in the middle of the battle like that, and then I also didn't like just the way he went about it. Like again, like the whole 2 goals thing. Like I feel like you could do that and it would have worked and stuff like that. And it almost did work, but just it didn't work just enough that it bothered me. Like there's a way to do like, whoa, there's too much going on in this battle where Keith is overwhelmed, but they didn't really go for that. It was just, oh, Keith is frustrated because a battle changes and the goal of the battle changes, and so you have to adapt to it. Like that didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me because every single battle you have to adapt to it as it changes, because that's how battles work. And he has had whole 2 seasons of stuff like this. So it just didn't quite feel right for me. And also one of the reasons why I had a problem with Shiro coming back with the team so early on was like, no, wait, I want to see them. They had just started to become a team, and everything had just sort of starting to fit together nicely. Like, I wanted them to be a good team before Shiro had come back, and we didn't get that yet. And then, so that's, yeah, it was one of the things where it just felt kind of meh and a little, I don't know, it just didn't quite work for me anyway. Like, it wasn't like a glaring issue, but it's definitely there. And I wasn't like upset, but it was just one of those things where like, I don't know if this worked quite as well as you would have liked. So yeah.
Yep. I think for me it kind of came down to like they never really ever showed like in a way why Shiro selected him as a leader. Like he didn't really show much potential as a leader, and I think that's what was missing. That I felt like they needed to have some moment where he kind of really like at some stage demonstrated that like he could make a really good decision. Because even the move that eventually kind of ended up sort of winning them the battle was just kind of like a solo thing he did on his own without telling anyone, which further went into the whole idea of like he's the loner who's really skilled on his own, rather than like, hey team, this is what I'm going to do, I'm really going to quickly jet to the side. And then maybe they could have done even more and be prepared for the second attack if he had told them. So I just think we were missing like, wait, Shiro, why did you select him as leader? It's kind of with Lance, with some of the stuff he was saying early on. It's just like, where's the potential here? But Greg, what are your thoughts on Keith taking on the role of the pilot of the Black Lion?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely interesting, and I think it's definitely, like you guys have been saying, it can be sort of hit or miss depending on what sort of aspects you're trying to key in on for Keith's sort of his sort of, I guess, leadership sort of development. I think, the parts where him, like, Harrison mentioned about him sort of learning the line and learning the differences, I think work really well, just because, Keith has always been more of a physical sort of battle-ready sort of character, which is why he was, so good in the Red Line. So, it's definitely interesting to see him sort of adjust to that sort of aspect. But as far as his sort of, character traits, I mean, like they said before, he is definitely sort of the loner type person of the group. So, which sometimes can work well as far as developing, the character into, being an actual leader and working sort of on a team, which, it definitely did seem like they were, starting-ish to sort of get there. And then, like you guys have said, with Shiro coming back, that sort of does throw sort of a monkey wrench sort of into the things, which could be interesting, but it definitely seems as of, at least right now, it's definitely sort of something that the team is just sort of having a hard time sort of working out with, because, Keith is supposed to be sort of the leader, and sort of he is sort of on the field, but you still have Shiro there who everyone still very much so sort of respects, so they definitely sort of take his opinion into account. So it's hard to have two sort of commanders sort of on the battlefield at the same time. So it's definitely something that they're going to have to work on, and could make for an interesting sort of storyline later on. And whatever does happen to sort of Shiro as far as being real Shiro, not being real Shiro, I mean, that's definitely something else that will, of course, shake up the team whatever sort of way it goes. So there's definitely sort of, potential there for Keith, to sort of, develop possibly into sort of a better leader. But I don't know, I think the way that they might have executed it right now in sort of the episodes they had so far, I think it's sort of, I don't know, it's sort of, iffy the way that it works. I actually sort of like the way that they were working with Lance, sort of his development as far as, changing up his lying position. I think that might have worked a little bit better for me personally, maybe even so Allura's, even though we didn't really get too much on Allura's. Hers was just sort of sped up. But I don't know, I think there's definitely sort of potential there. It's just something that needs to be maybe fleshed out a bit more.
And Kelly, your own thoughts on Keith as the leader?
Exactly, yeah. I know every time it gets to my thoughts, I always say I agree with you guys, but like you guys bring up really good points that I have to reiterate. I agree with for the most part, particularly with like the idea of the team not gelling well or not doing well together right off the bat. I completely understand. I actually liked that. I liked how in the third episode they were struggling a bit, and how like when Keith first was piloting the Black Lion, he's like, I have to get used to these controls. I totally like that stuff, but like you said, Morgan, there's never really a point in the series where we go, yeah, Keith can be a leader. You know what I mean? You kind of see it maybe a little bit, but not really, and not even he really sees it. And then it's kind of, and then in episode 3, it just got so frustrating. I was like, this is stupid. You know what I mean? Like I understood Keith's original plan. Like I was like, okay, yeah, he wants to get Lotar or whatever. He just cut off the head before things get worse. You know, and it's still obviously the impulsive Keith choice, but it's in character, right? Like, it makes sense. But then, like, the fact that he kept going and things were getting worse, and then at one point, he literally says this, and I was just like, why did the Black Lion choose you? He literally says, it's not about the team. And I'm like, what the hell, dude? It really pissed me off. I was like, and not in a way where I thought it was, like, Keith struggling and that he's going to have to learn. It just made me feel like Keith was never going to change. It made me feel like this is just kind of how he is. Like, the writing of it seemed too repetitive and too frustrating for me. Like, it didn't feel, I don't know, like I think it was the writing. Like, and what's so weird, because the writing throughout the season is so good, but I felt like something about the way Keith's development as a leader is, the writing on that arc is not good, because like, it's like everyone keeps telling him, like, you know, the Black Lion chose you could be the leader, and he just never, he doesn't grow. Like, every time something bad happens, he can't handle it, he goes back to being a loner. I get that it takes time, but like, it makes you frustrated when these big decisions are made, like the Black Lion choosing Keith, and the Black Lion having the quintessence, obviously some sense of quintessence in Keith that he did with Shiro, but then you're like, prove it. You know, like, prove that this decision makes sense. And half the time in episode 3, Lance was like a really good leader. Like, Lance is the one with the level head. However, they do explain that very well in episode 2, and I definitely want to get into that. I think they did a better job with, ironically, they did a better job with Lance than they did with Keith, and Keith is the one that's like the leader, so the Black Lion. So it's so weird. I wish it was better written. And I agree with Harrison about how and it's one of the reasons why I'm not as happy that Shiro came back so early, is because it only made things even worse with the team dynamic, because now you have this pseudo second leader with them that can't use the Black Lion but is being treated like the Black Lion, but Keith has been chosen to be the Black Lion. It's making things a mess, you know what I mean? And I wish they had developed a bit more as a team before we got things even worse, because then you would have felt like, okay, now Keith's getting a hang of things. Oh, now Shiro's back. Now things are going to progress or not progress and make things complicated. I felt like that would have been more interesting than for us to just be in this rut where Keith is just not doing well. And of course I feel bad for Keith, you know what I mean? I don't actually hate Keith. I actually do find him fairly interesting in parts, and especially with last season with the Blade of Momora, but like, then they never bring all that, then they never bring that up again, which is, again, was still the stupidest thing the show's ever done, was the whole, like, him being Gara and no one ever talking about it. That was just weird. And so, like, there are all these things about Keith that I do like, and plus he's voice acted very well, like, and you get his struggles, but when he's actually in the Black Lion, in that seat, I just want to punch him in the face. like it's so annoying. I wish I didn't feel that way, but it's true. And I guess those are my two big things, is Shiro coming back a bit too early, even though I'm really excited to see how this develops, and Keith just not, it's more of the writing than it is the concept itself. I get that the team's going to struggle, but like, I don't know. I'm done explaining it. I feel like I've done the best I could with it.
Yeah, I suppose, like, even with the piloting, I never felt like they really even attempted to, like, show that, like, oh, he gets the hang of what the Black, like, Line is meant to be, and that, like, going from being, like, the super fast, super maneuverable Red Line pilot to having to be the kind of leader with, like, bigger firepower and, like, make the big moves in battle rather than being the, like, dogfighter that, like, he used to be. Like, even, like, on the stuff that he's good at, like the battle side of things, they never really got into it. And again, I like the idea that they kind of bring up later on that, like, you know, that Alfor chose Zarkon to be the leader because he's the better, like, military tactician, and then an Alfor can be the right hand to kind of support him on the other side of things. But, you know, they need to do definitely a little bit more with Keith here. But yeah, I suppose we'll move on to Lance, which is basically the way the show went in terms of showing you who got which line, basically. And I really liked how they did this, in that instead of just doing the same thing again with like the black line of just, oh, now everyone try out the red line seat just to see who works there. No, they do it like, no, Lance is actually locked out of the blue line and, you know, can't get in, and is later called by the red line after he, as Allura really nicely explains, kind of he's accepted this kind of role within the team, that he's accepted that he's not meant to be the leader. He's kind of taken up this like almost support position for Keith, and that's kind of like determined a new role on the team for him, and so he's locked out of the blue line, which kind of represents a different position on the team, and now is into the right hand man position. And I really like that, and like she kind of said with her father, that like that's the position she wanted, but it fits with this dynamic with Keith as leader, that Lance is the one they kind of often turn to when they had a issue with Keith this season. So it was quite fitting. It's just like I really feel like Lance actually kind of stood out a lot this season as a character with what they kind of brought up with him at various points, of just what they did later on with him, and the whole like, oh, Shiro's back now, I guess that means I'm the one who's going to have to take the you know, the empty space, and someone else will take over my seat as Paladin. That he kind of is lacking in a bit of confidence, even though he does actually play a very important role within the team. So I was very impressed with how they made kind of Lance into the new kind of Red Lion pilot. I do wish they'd maybe like made a little bit more of a kind of thing about like them exchanging Bayards, and that like you see Lance give Allura the blue Bayard, but you don't really see like Keith give Lance the red one, and him kind of find the black Bayard within the black line. But maybe I'm placing too much importance on that. But Greg, what were your thoughts on Lance taking on the role of the Red Paladin?
Yeah, no, I think it definitely was done better for me personally than sort of Keith's sort of transition. So for me, it worked pretty well. I mean, I think a lot of the smaller scenes, the smaller sort of character scenes, that was something that we mentioned that, you know, this season didn't have as much of, just because it was so sort of focused and sort of condensed. I think those actually worked really well. Just sort of, Lance, even though he's sort of the goofball and doesn't really sort of, he makes it seem like he doesn't take things very sort of serious. He really sort of does. And they did a good job of showing that in this season, as far as just sort of his insecurities that he has as far as being a paladin, and, trying to do what's really right for the team. Like you guys said, like he definitely is, sort of like the pseudo second leader, or the one who's acting more like the leader than Keith is during a lot of different points here. I mean, he definitely is sort of the glue that keeps the team together, which, he did even as well when he was sort of the blue line. So it really is just sort of a switch in line, but he still sort of acts the same sort of core type of character. So I think that definitely works well for his character here. And, I don't know, I like, how they sort of, work with him throughout the whole sort of, I guess, season in general. So no, for me, I think Lance's transition towards being the Red Lion, I think, for me, it worked pretty well.
Yeah. I do feel they're probably potentially like setting up something with the fact that, most of the team still do kind of consider him the goofball, and that's all he really seems to be. That there was a lot of like joking kind of at Lance's expense, when like he kind of has in a way moved up this season and kind of proven himself a bit more, yet he's still in a way considered the joke of the team. So I'm wondering, will that be like a kind of thing of just kind of Lance really getting the full respect of the team and being, acknowledged as like one of the more like leadership focused members of the team? Because I think Keith was kind of, for the most part, giving him that respect this season, but it was the others like Pidge and Hunk who kind of in general weren't. Allura, I think, just with their little conversation that they had, there seems to be like some respect there, because I suppose they both understand the position that each other is in, but like Pidge and Hunk maybe have to accept that Lance is maybe better than they think he is, or something like that. But Harrison, what were your thoughts on Lance taking over the Red Lion?
I thought it was really well done. Like, at first I thought, okay, Keith's the leader now, so Allura's going to be the Red Lion. Okay, cool. Like, I thought, like, I had it, like, thought out and everything, but then, nope, that's not what it was at all. Like, when Allura, when the Lion didn't respond to alert, I was actually like, I was shocked. I was like, oh, okay, well, now what? And so I liked that it was a thing where, we didn't know, and then all of a sudden, we see Lance's lock at the blue line, so I thought, like, oh, okay, so he's changed now, so, and then the red line called out to him, so, like, that actually was, I thought was actually pretty interesting and cool, so I liked that a lot, like, as you change as a person and maybe grow, you might potentially change lines, and I thought that was a really interesting concept, and so I really like how Lance was handled, not just, like, as far as the changing of the lines, but just, like, this season, I thought, like, it was just really well done. Like, yeah, he's kind of the joke character, but, like, he was a lot more, like, I remember season 2, like, he joked and was, like, saying, like, how he was the sharpshooter and everyone kind of laughed at him. But in this season, one of the things I really, really liked was in that scene, in the episode, I think it was after Shiro had come back, where they're just overtaking one of the outposts. We see Lance is the sniper guy from far away. He is the sharpshooter, so and they didn't it was just a nice visual thing to sort of call back to what he had said in season 2. Like, no, he actually is a sharpshooter, in at least in this scene. So I thought that was great, and I loved it. Like, he's snipering around and he's saving people, and he's making smart decisions and stuff like this, and actually, like, really helping the battle. And then also later on, he saves Lance, and when they're fighting Lotor's angels, I guess, the little entourage girls, when I don't remember which one of them is coming at, like, first something at it, but then Lance shoots it and saves Keith. Like, he had a lot of nice moments this season. And it was, written pretty well, and I just really liked what they did with him. And the conversation he had with Keith was really nice, and I just really liked what they did with him. He's definitely, like, grown as a character, and I just really liked it. Like, I was almost kind of shocked at how well he was treated this season. It was just very, very nice. So I like the new development of him becoming the right-hand man now, and being in the Red Lion, and just what his and Keith's dynamic's going to be from now on, and with, like, the leader and sort of the second in command, almost, you could say. And so I thought it was just really interesting how they really just took things that he had done in the past and just really, like, made more of a character out of him, and then just sort of the comedic guy. And I just really like that. Again, just my favorite thing is probably just the sharpshooter thing and how that actually came back in this season. I just thought he was treated really well, and I really like how he's now the Red Lion, because it just creates such an interesting dynamic thing. And just one small thing is, like, are they going to change their costumes now so they're all color coordinated correctly, or is he just going to forever wear the blue in the Red Lion? So I just thought that's an interesting, almost kind of funny little thing, but just a little small thing. And also, yeah, with the changing of, gosh, I just completely lost the name of their little weapons.
Bayards?
But, yeah, Bayards, goodness. But, yeah, it would have been nice to see, like, more physical of them exchanging all hands on all sides, but it would have been a nice thing for him and Allura to have that moment and things like that. But, I mean, I guess that's not too big of a thing, but just a small thing. But, yeah, so I just really liked how Lance was done this season.
And Kelly, your thoughts on Lance stepping up into the Red Line?
Yeah, I thought it was incredibly well done, and I thought it was going to be just a repeat of the first scene where they were going to be like, all right, let's see who works in the Red Line, and like I didn't know how they were going to go about it, but when Allura sat down on the Red Lion, I remembered, I was like, oh, right, her father was the Red Lion. You know what I mean? Like, we knew that earlier on, so I was like, of course she wants to take this on. And when it doesn't work, I was heartbroken for her, but, like, you kind of get it, too, because, like, that's not, like, who she, like, she isn't her father, you know what I mean? Like, she can't, like, just because she's the father's daughter doesn't mean they have the same personality, they have the same role to play. So I really liked how that was done. So when they all went to go fight, and Lance was being shut out of blue, I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is like I didn't expect it to be like, here's the thing, I knew that Lance was going to be the Red Lion and Allura would be the Blue Lion. Like, I knew this early on because that's how the original show was. I just didn't expect them to be, I didn't expect, like, how the transition would go to be so well written like that. You know what I mean? In a very interesting way where Blue is intentionally shutting Lance out because Blue knows that his role is now belongs on Keith's right-hand side. You know what I mean? It's not the same as when fake Shiro tried to get the Black Lion to move. This is Blue, who is compatible with Lance and still can be compatible with Lance, I think, is saying no. you need to be with Red now. You're more suited to be on the Red Lion. And he just needed to be told that with Allura. I love their scenes here in this episode, because I feel like we got more explanation here on how the Lions work than we have throughout the entire show, with just Allura saying, when my father built Voltron, he knew he wasn't suited to be the leader. He was not the military guy. So he stepped down and became the right-hand man and realized the importance in that. And so when Lance did that in the beginning of the episode here, in the second episode, which again was a huge shock to me too, just how much he stepped up in that one moment, that just made him the perfect candidate to be the Red Lion, so to be the Red Paladin. So I just thought that was just so well done. And what also I thought was well done, because I think this is seriously going to be an arc throughout the season, like you mentioned, Morgan. I think this is really a thing, is just how he is reacting to Blue shutting him out. You know what I mean? He's like he has no idea what to do, and he just assumes Blue hates him now. He's like, it was just a I like how he was like, it was just a phase that I wanted to fight with the Black Lion, and I can't believe he resorted to actually flirting with a mechanical beast. I thought that was freaking funny. Like, okay, I'll flirt with him. Like that's how desperate he was. And I think that actually tells a lot about his character, is that that these things that he does, like being silly and whatever, is like a way of like desperately trying to like get people to connect with him in some way. You know what I mean? Because as we're learning throughout this season, particularly in that really interesting and probably one of the better scenes of the show so far, in episode 6, when he has that conversation with Keith, he's clearly stating, like, and I wrote a whole meta about this, and it's ridiculous, that like, I am not the best paladin here. I am not worthy of this. Allura is so much better than me. Shiro's back, so you don't need me at all. So like, he has serious confidence issues, and based on how he's treated by his team, with him being made fun of, because he is silly, he is a goofball, and the team probably thinks he can take it because they're just joking around, But like, they're being so naive about like how he actually is struggling finding a role on the team. He's like, no, I'm the sharpshooter, right, guys? And like, and they're just kind of dismissing that. So I don't think this is over. I don't think this arc is over. I think we're going to get some serious, I don't want to say repercussions, but like, we might get a sacrifice situation going on here. I don't know if they'll actually kill him off, but I'm thinking Lance might do something that would be like, look, I'm not crucial to the team. Shiro needs to be back. I'm sacrificing myself right now. Like that type of thing. And everyone's just like, what the? So this is the type of stuff I think it's getting into, and I think it's so well written. I'm so happy with what they did with Lance this season. And yeah, in general, I'm just shocked at how the first scene went down with Lance, like when Keith walked out of the Lion, and Lance just kind of had this look of, okay. You know what I mean? Like he was really upset. It's not like he was like suddenly like cool, but like he realized, this is who I need to be right now. We need this to move on. And the fact that Keith said no, his face is actually like, what are you talking about? It's funny. Like, they both know they're crucial to the team, but they don't let each other know that. It's kind of weird. So it's cool that Lance literally put his hand on his shoulder and was like, just the Black Lion. I trust the Lions' decision. You should too. You know what I mean? Like, Lance puts a lot of faith into why the Lions choose their paladins. You know what I mean? Like, and you can kind of see that in the part where he's talking to Keith in episode 6, where he's like, since there's only 6 of us and 5 lions, I should just step out because the lions fit better with these paladins. And he's not thinking about like how he's needed as part of the group as well. So overall, I mean, I know this topic was about Lance switching over to the Red Lion, and I actually think it is a pretty good fit. Like, in my opinion, like, even though Keith and Lance are very different people, I think it makes sense why Lance, like, I could sort of see the similar quintessence, I guess, because they say later on in the show it has to do with like the quintessence of the person and the lion, so it has something to do with their like personalities or whatever. So you almost question like, okay, so I guess he fits the Red Lion now, and he sort of does, because he's kind of taken on Keith's role to Shiro, as it's like a switch. It's like Keith was to Shiro as to now what Lance is to Keith, So I really like the shift overall. I thought it was really well written, and his character was. Something's gonna happen with it. They are building up to something. I hope, and I hope they are, because if they're not, then it's like, what was the point of these scenes? So we'll see.
Yeah, and it also fits as well because Lance is the other prior to like Voltron stuff happening, was the other one who was actually like a pilot in training, as well. So him getting the like fastest, most maneuverable line, and his main issue being like, oh, I have to use the brakes on this thing because it's so fast, was actually pretty funny to see. But yeah, we move on to then Allura, who becomes the blue paladin. Again, I kind of liked how they did this, and that like Lance leaves to go get into the red line, and then the particle shield just comes down, and she's just like, oh, this is interesting. And it was just like they only like lingered in that moment for a little bit, but it was just like, that was a really cool way to do that, just kind of almost take you by surprise. Like she's really feeling really low after kind of being not the black paladin, not the red paladin. She's blue, and she kind of didn't even expect it at all. I thought that was a cool way just to approach the initial moment of her getting into it for the first time, and then obviously, of course, her being the kind of the rookie of the season, having some piloting experience, but more with the castle, and having to adjust to being more of a fighter pilot style pilot. And you know, they had her kind of train right on the job, basically being pursued by Lotor. But I liked how they kind of did her arc of kind of connecting with the line, and that it took her a bit to realize that, you know, she's in not just a piece of machinery or a pilot, a plane. She actually has to like make a connection with this kind of being, and it wasn't until she kind of just said that, like, I need help, that the line responded to her, and she kind of got it. Because before, she was just trying to be nice to it or just command it around, and it took her acknowledging that she just needs help and communicating with her line to make that connection. And she was the one who kind of got them all out of that situation in the end. So I liked her kind of first kind of big moment, and then she of course wears the pink paladin armor, but they explain that it's to kind of you know pay honor basically to all the previous paladins who have come before, including Shiro. So that was a cool explanation to kind of give her own, you know, unique color, and not just like she's now wearing blue and just switch all their, I suppose, all the color and like designs that we're familiar with. I kind of get to a degree why they didn't switch their armor colors and just kind of had them hold different bayards, because it's kind of a key part of their design. Maybe they didn't want to do that, and this was a interesting enough kind of way to do that. I definitely still want to see a little bit more of kind of, you know, how what it means to her to now be part of Voltron, having been kind of on the outside for a while, and address that a little bit more, her connection with the blue line, and maybe just address a little bit more about what exactly the blue line is kind of like about as such. But I was overall pretty impressed with how they did Allura's transition into the team. But Greg, what were your thoughts on Allura becoming the blue paladin?
Yeah, no, I thought that was done rather well. You know, along the same lines as Lance was. I think the transition over, the fact that we actually got to see some of the transition from, you know, Lance and Allura, I think that sort of worked well. I mean, I don't know, maybe that would have worked well with Keith's sort of situation here, but I think it's definitely interesting for Allura, just her being, you know, her just growing up in this environment of just sort of knowing lines, them being, you know, created by her father. I think, you know, it definitely means, you know, a good amount to her on sort of another level. So it makes sense that this would be, you know, rather important for her, and just seeing her sort of, you know, adapt to the line, you know, as our other sort of, you know, pilots are as well. I think it's definitely interesting just to see, you know, her potential and her growth. I mean, you know, they even make note of that, of her just sort of, you know, coming up to speed pretty quickly, you know, using the lines, which, I mean, I guess she, you know, she sort of learned by seeing these paladins sort of how they sort of struggled with the lines. So I guess it kind of makes sense, you know, that with her just sort of, I guess, her natural sort of affinity, that she would be able to, you know, be pretty good at using the lines, and eventually using the lines, and, you know, pretty good at using the Bayard as well, you know, developing her own sort of, you know, weapon that works pretty well, that, you know, Lance makes note of. So for me, I think it's definitely interesting to see her sort of, you know, become sort of one of the paladins, which, you know, is from, you know, the original series, people sort of, you know, sort of speculated that. So it's cool to see how they sort of, you know, implemented it in this series, which is a bit different, I think, from the original one. So it's definitely pretty cool to see, and I think for the most part it worked well for me, and it's definitely something that I'm sure they'll expand upon in the future, because, you know, there's definitely a lot of potential for her to grow as sort of a paladin specifically, rather than sort of being stuck in the castle and how that sort of differs. So no, for me, I think it worked pretty well.
Yeah, and I liked how even though she was so involved, she's seen Voltron so many times, and the second she was involved in it, she still was really excited and was just like, I'm a leg, I'm so excited to be a leg, and like just how like impressed she was with it all. But Harrison, what were your thoughts on Allura's switch from, I suppose, captain of the castle to Blue Paladin?
I really liked it. Like I always wanted to get Allura like in the action more so than just sort of a commander thing, just because I just think that would have been so cool. And little bits we got of her in the previous seasons were really cool. So I was really excited to have her as a paladin. So I was like, yes, finally. And and again, like I liked how they did sort of the way they did it, like how Lance had to. As soon as Lance realized, he was for the red, I was like, oh, okay, so Allura's going to be the blue. And then, like, how, as soon as Lance left, the particle shield came down, and Allura realized that she was meant for the blue one. So I like how that was done. And I really liked how she actually, had to get used to the line because, a small maneuverable line is, drastically different from a giant commanding castle. And so I thought that was nice to show that she had to get used to the different commands of it and all. And I like how it didn't just because she's meant to be in the blue line doesn't mean like she somehow meshed perfectly right away. Like she had problems with it. Like she's saying, like, I'm trying being nice, I'm trying commanding it. It's just not listening to me. And I like how the show actually took time to focus on her like struggling with it. And then when they were on that planet, and she was lost in the gas, she had that moment where she just, where she just was at alone, was just low and didn't know where anyone was, and had to have that nice good bonding mode with her line. And then the scanners worked, and noticed no one else's scanners were working, but hers were working because she had that good moment of bonding with the line, and it had worked out for her. And then she went out, and not only did she bond with her line and come out on top, but she also found all the others and was able to get them out of the gas. So I just really like how she is now she was a member of the team before, but now she is a paladin of Voltron, and I just just excited to see what they do with that, just because it's such a cool thing to finally get her in on the action, and just to see what her dynamic is with the team now that she's a full-on member of Voltron, and just see where they go from there. So I like the whole bonding they had with the lion, and how it wasn't just it's just you get in and you're good to go right away. She was struggling, and I like that she was struggling because it makes sense, why wouldn't she struggle? And then with the whole color of hers being pink, I like how it wasn't just she's pink because why not? No, it was it actually gave it sort of a symbolic reasoning as to why it's pink, and she explained it, the significance of it in her culture. So I really liked that, and overall, just I liked Allura as a paladin, and I'm excited to see where she goes from here.
Mm-hmm. And Kelly, your thoughts on Allura becoming a paladin?
Yeah, I really am so happy that she's a paladin now because she is really awesome and really skilled. I remember at the end of season 1 and season 2 when she was just super cool at fighting stuff, and her physical fighting abilities are really good. So she deserves to be a paladin. She deserves to fight alongside them. We've just never seen her pilot a lion. We've seen her physical abilities, and I really like how in episode 6 you see just how much she's grown, how she uses her Bayard, and how the Bayard, remember in the first episode when they said Bayards change depending on their users? I like how Lance now with the red Bayard has a sniper rifle because he keeps saying he's a sharpshooter, and now he's like, I am, I swear, and then it becomes kind of like a sniper type of thing. And with Allura, it's a weapon that she emanates with, even though that used to be the blue gun that Lance used to use. So I really like that consistency and how the Bayards work and everything, and just how quickly she develops. It's also mentioned in episode 6, Lance says, and she's developing so much faster than all of us. I mean, I would have liked to see that before. I feel like there's still moments where they rushed past some team development in order to bring Shiro back into things. I'm not gonna let that go personally, but I mean, I still like that was brought up. As for her actually controlling the lion, I also like that she was struggling a lot. That she it hurt a bit. It did hurt because you're Allura is so awesome. It kind of hurts to see her be so sucky at this. You know what I mean? Like she's so talented, so it almost makes you frustrated. Like, Allura, I know you can do this, but she's doing very poorly for most of the time until she actually, when she's stuck, when she is at her lowest low. It actually kind of reminded me of Korra. When she was at her lowest low, you're open to the greatest change. So, and that even kind of makes me think of Lance too, because like Lance felt so low in that moment. He's like, okay, I see things have to change. I see that Keith has to be the leader. I see that I have to be Red. You know what I mean? In this moment when he switched. So I think that's kind of what the show is doing. It's like you have to just turn off your brain a bit and trust in the lions, trust in the lions a bit. And that's what she did. She said, particularly I like when she says, the universe depends on me. Everything depends on me, but I can't control everything. I need your help. And then the lion actually responds to her, because the whole time she's just like, why aren't you listening to me? She's like she's treating it like a ship, like her castle. You know what I mean? So I really like this dynamic here. And I also, again, I feel so bad for Blue. Like, how does it feel being flirted on by, that scene was too funny. And the fact that she remembered what Lance said to her in the first episode is just really, like, okay. because that, if you didn't catch the reference, she was like, you're really activating my particle barrier right now. That's, like, the first thing Lance says to her in like the first episode or second episode of the show. So I thought that was a really good callback to that. Same thing with the I'm a leg, when Hunk's like, isn't it cool? So it's so cool to have Allura be on the team. That being said, I'm still really annoyed that we don't know why Blue picks who she picks. You know what I mean? Like we still don't have like this sense of, okay, what exactly is the Blue Lion's role? Because Allura and Lance, like, they're not that similar of people. And I'm not saying that people who pilot the Lion, I guess, have to be exactly the same. Keith is obviously much more of a loner than Shiro is, right? So, like, there are going to be differences. But it makes you think, like, well, why was Allura chosen for Blue, but not for Red? Even though Laura's not a lot like Keith, so it makes sense why she's not Red. But if she's like Lance, and Lance can do Red, I'm getting a little buggy about like what the Lions see in their paladins. I wish we got a bit more of that. I want more meat on how the Lions work still, and I'm starting, if I had to like put a theory into this as to like what resonates with Blue, it would be obviously like having a big heart and like being kind of like a heart, like one of the hearts of the team, you know what I mean? Like particularly more than Pidge, maybe the same level as Hunk, you know what I mean? Like in regards to that, I'm thinking maybe it has to do with that, but it also has a lot to do with like a sense of responsibility and caring about how your appearances is to others. Because like Allura at the very beginning of season 3, she's like, okay, I have to look good to make sure everyone knows that I can take care of this and everything will be okay. Like, and Lance does that all the time, you know what I mean? So I'm not saying it's vanity. I'm not trying to say it's vanity, because like obviously the Blue Line want qualities that are like good, but like I think it's a lot about caring, I guess, about like how you are to other people. And I don't know, I want to know more about the Blue Lion's decisions, it's interesting to me. It's one of the more interesting aspects of the show to me, and it's kind of failing me on like not giving us the exact reason. The best one is the Lance transition, and understanding the Red Lion's role as the right hand to the Black Lion, and how the Red Lion is kind of the second in command, sort of, if you think about it. I really like that. I just want to know more about Blue. So that's what frustrated me about Allura switching. We don't get a reason. It's just, here you go. Now that Lance moved over, now Allura can get in, and you're not given like a reason as to why they mentally link, what the quintessence is. So, yeah.
Yeah, like I suppose from this season, my interpretation of the Blue Line is kind of like it's kind of the one who supports, like the member of the team who kind of supports everyone else, and that like that's what Allura says, that like everyone depends on her. Like who does she have to depend on if that's the case? And that's kind of where the Blue Line steps in. And similarly, I think in like the first 2 seasons, people would I think Greg said this earlier on, that like Lance is kind of like the glue of the team who like keeps them together with his like funness, and that seems to be the same way for the original Blue Paladin Blades. He's kind of like that, and then it also kind of happens to turn out that like I suppose maybe initially they're kind of 3 of maybe like the weaker pilots initially, and so them depending on Blue kind of like shapes them into like a solid member of the team, because in like the flashback, the original blue paladin is like the only one who like ever gets like hit or like takes any sort of damage, and stuff like that. But you know that's obviously part of the interpretation stuff. But yeah, that's the switching of paladin positions. So I guess Harrison, what's your first talking point?
I guess before we jump into all of the alternate reality things, I guess maybe not a big topic, but I just want to get into, we finally get some ground action of the team on the ground, and then seeing them also go up against what do you call it? Not Zarkon, but Lotor's little group of team. Just like sort of the action of finally seeing everyone like not fighting inside Voltron for once, because I mean, I think everyone's been wanting that for the first 2 seasons, so finally getting a decent amount of it in this season.
Yeah, like this is definitely one of my criticisms. I think I said this on the season 2 review podcast. That like, yeah, I definitely like to see them fighting the ground a bit more, and kind of develop everyone more in that way. And here I think we definitely did get a couple of nice scenes of everyone fighting. I still would like to see some of the team progress in that, like it really felt like Pidge and Hunk, especially like this season, felt like they're kind of a little bit weak on the ground, especially like 1-to-1, like when it was basically the 4 of Lotor's kind of group against all the paladins. It felt like it was really only like maybe Keith who could kind of hold his own against any one of them, and then Lance kind of, depending on who he was up against, and then Pidge and Hunk just seemed to get like wrecked completely. Whereas like obviously like Shiro on the team, he could do it, and then Allura can hold her own as well. So I still would like to see like Pidge and Hunk like maybe get some on the ground combat training or something like that, and really form the whole team into like a force on the ground, where like it actually feels like they're a full on kind of like unit of like strong fighters. But maybe they're doing that on purpose to like keep it that way, so that like Pidge is kind of like the kind of tech expert, and then like Hunk is like the engineer. They don't want them to be overly like amazing skilled fighters, but I'm not entirely sure. But either way, I did like the fights that we saw, and I'm excited to see if they do go into like maybe pairing them off in terms of like this character is a rival with this paladin, and they kind of continue that on for like a season or 2 depending on where they go. But yeah, I liked the extra focus on ground fighting we got as they were going through the different outposts and so on. But Greg, do you have any thoughts on the ground fighting that we saw?
Yeah, no, I think it definitely worked well in this season for sure. I mean, the bit that we got, I think, all the action scene in the show is always, pretty good. But what we did get to see from our 2 teams versus each other, I think was pretty neat. I mean, with there actually being a set of characters on the other side that our paladins can actually go against, now it actually, I guess now it makes sense that there might be more ground fighting. I mean, I don't know, the show is still set in space. So, I mean, of course, there's still going to be ships and Voltron, being a robot, and that being, one of the core focuses of the show. Of course, there'll still be a ton of Voltron fights, I'm sure of, but I think it's nice, for sure to sort of break it up every once in a while, just so it's not all sort of in space sort of battles here. So I don't know, I think they definitely have potential for, I guess increasing their sort of combat ground sort of mobility. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess, with your sort of tech people and engineering people, it doesn't, usually they have some other sort of talents that sort of make them sort of stand out during a fight. Like, they're trying to sort of, shut down a machine or something like that, which we have seen them do. So it does, it seems like they're at least using the characters to the best of their abilities, when they need them to. But it would be nice to see it a bit vary, or to at least see them, at least get a couple sort of good shots. And I mean, I do remember they had like one time where Pidge did have like a nice little battle scene for a little bit where she was figuring out her weapons. So they definitely can do, little moments here and there that I think would help us sort of, see at least their potential for at least, a couple good hits in during certain fights.
Kelly, your thoughts on the ground fighting we saw this season?
Yeah, I'm really glad we got more of it. Episode 6 was really a showcase of this, where the episode started with them on a mission. Obviously, like I said earlier, we got to see Allura really doing well. Lance finally showing off his sharpshooter skills. Like, it was a good way to show the team is developing even without Shiro. I just kind of wish we had a bit more. The only thing, actually, I gotta ask about this because I was really confused by this. With the first scene of episode 6, when Lance is like on the post, like looking through his reticle on his sniper rifle, I couldn't tell if he actually hit anything because half the time I couldn't tell if the shots were coming from his gun or from someone else's gun on the ground, like, because it didn't look like him, but it probably was. But like the way that it was animated, I thought it looked like something else was happening somewhere else because you didn't see the gun have a fire back or like anything. I don't know. I thought it was strangely done. I couldn't tell if it was Hunk who was shooting because then Lance would like move it to look at Hunk and you're like, oh, did Hunk just shoot him? Or wait, did Lance just shoot him? I don't know anymore. So that was me being stupid. I couldn't tell what was going on. So I couldn't tell if Lance was actually being really useful or if Hunk took care of it before him or something and he felt like useless again. And that's what fed into the next scene when Lance was like, maybe I shouldn't be a paladin. I thought it was because he actually didn't get anybody, but I don't know anymore. I couldn't tell how the animators were trying to portray that. That was just my stupid me being confused. And still am, actually. But I really liked seeing the team work together on the ground, particularly fighting Lotor's henchwoman, which was really, really cool. Particularly Keith versus Axia. That was a really good fight. I liked how at one point... Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. Well, yeah, that too. But then before Keith was fighting the chameleon lady, and when she like that choreography I thought was really cool. And then when she took the Bayard, it like he transformed the Bayard to go back into his hand. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about with that.
Yeah, the armbar situation. Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. Like, that was a really unique setup, more so than the other parts of the fight. So, I don't know. I thought that was cool. As for Hunk and Pidge, yeah, this season they were and we can have a whole talking point on that, actually, but, like, they were very sidelined this season. But you kind of understand why, because they are sticking with their lions, and everyone else had this huge shift. So you understand why you need to take the time to adjust with everyone else, more so than, like, Hunk and Pidge or anything. So, seeing them not do as well on the ground makes sense. So they didn't do horribly. I liked how Hunk put that person in a chokehold, but then put the lizard one in the chokehold, and the one without a face, and then the tail grabbing him. Like the fighting on the ground was really good. Like it was really fun to watch, and I want to see more of that. But like Greg said, it's a space show, and we're probably gonna get more stuff in the ships and the air and stuff. So, and I don't know. I hope we see more fighting on the ground, but we may not.
And Harrison, do you have any further thoughts on this?
Yeah, I just want to say, I was just rewatched the scene here with the Lance and the sharpshooting, and I guess it's a little hard to see if it was him or not, because you see him point at like a guy, and then you see the guy just sort of blows up and falls over. Like the gun doesn't have any kind of recoil or anything like that. So I guess I could see where there is a bit of a confusion there for you, Kelly. So yeah, I mean, I assumed it was Lance, and I guess that might be what you're supposed to take it as. But I guess
probably was. It was probably Lance. I didn't feel like there was a point. Like it didn't feel like he pressed a trigger or anything. Or nothing on the screen changed. Like nothing on his the measurements or the bars or anything on the screen. Nothing changed. So for me, that kind of indicated that wasn't his doing. That was someone else's doing. But maybe it was supposed to be Lance that made that shot. So I'm just like. I actually blame the animation for that, because I couldn't figure out what we were supposed to take that as. I don't know.
Yeah, because and also when he shot the door thing again, it's the same thing that nothing like you said, nothing on the screen changed. You just see a little puff of smoke and the door closes, and it's okay, I guess they should have added at least just a little bit of a recoil, or maybe you see the bullet come from his gun and from his general direction, but you don't see anything at all. You just puff of smoke and the guy blows up. So I guess they could have done a little bit more to show that if it was Lance or not, because I mean, that's definitely a little bit confusing. But as far as the action goes, I thought it was fantastic. I always love seeing characters, and we normally see them in the Voltron, so I like seeing them in a different element of fighting and stuff like that, and it shows them fighting as a team, which is just great. And Allura and her whip is just awesome. Like, I just thought, like, that's just a cool way to show how she and her Bayard are, like, that's their kind of sort of bonding weapon kind of thing. Like, it is different for everyone, and I just like how, just like this little weird, like, sort of laser whip thing is just so cool. Like, she uses it to, like, block a laser a few times, and then she just, like, slices through the guys. Like, I just thought it was, like, really cool, and just seeing a character fight with a whip was just interesting, and it's not like a typical weapon you see, I guess you could say. So it was just, I really liked it, and Yolance with his sniper rifle was just cool, and yeah, the thing that Keith did with his sword, how he like switched hands with it, that was really cool. Like, even when I was watching, I was like, whoa, that was awesome. Just seeing it happen, because like it was cool, like a little trick movie had and everything like that. And then to the whole point of the Pidge and Hunk, yeah, this season it was, like you said, Kelly, it might be a whole talking point, but yeah, just it would have been nice to get more, at least action with them, at least, if nothing else. But yeah, but as far as just the ground fighting, I do hope they have a thing where they become rivals with Lotor and his entourage, because like in this one, like I was actually kind of surprised at how quickly they were basically defeated by them. So I was like, I hope there's like a scene like next season where they come back and they've grown as fighters and they're not so easily like taken out, where Pidge and Hunk can hold their own against some of the other members, and it's actually like this full-on kind of struggle with what goes on here. So I hope that's something that they do, and there is a kind of rivalry thing both like in ships and on the ground. That I really hope they do something with that, because that could just be really interesting, and to have a thing that's kind of with regular villains. Like, not often that you have just a team of regular villains, especially in this setting, to go up against. So I hope they do something with that, because yeah, the action here was good, and I definitely hope we get more of it.
I think we're back around to me now for talking points. So I suppose I'll jump into what ends up kind of being one of our bigger kind of plot point, world building moments, which is obviously the, I suppose, proper introduction and explanation of the idea of like alternate realities in this universe, and it being a really huge thing, with like obviously these portals between the realities being very important with regards to quintessence, and then the ability to go between these portals only being allowed when you have something that is constructed using the ore from one of these comets that is obviously what Voltron is made from, and is a plot point obviously for episode 4. So it also becomes a huge thing obviously in the backstory episode 7. But I was really interested with when we started episode 4, because I kind of initially was thinking like, really, are we doing this? We're doing just like a random like alternate reality episode. This seems a bit like one-off. But then they actually get into some really important stuff, like this is what Voltron's made from, and the idea of like, oh, this is how Lotor gets a weapon that can actually rival Voltron being made of the same material. That makes complete sense from like a plot perspective. And yeah, I just really liked how they just kind of expanded things out here, adding stuff onto quintessence, the importance of the comet, the metal being this kind of what do they call it, trans reality metal, which is what Voltron's made from, as just like that's like the ultimate material in this universe, and that explains a lot of origin stuff. So like when we got to episode 7 after episode 4, I was just like, oh, that's why that episode was so important. So yeah, that just I suppose we'll just start with the general thing of just the importance of this, because previously it was just like Slav as like a kind of joke almost, talking about alternate realities, but now it's like, actually this is kind of the reason everything has happened in a way, alternate realities. But Kelly, what were your thoughts on the kind of heavy introduction of alternate realities?
Right, okay, so I will not lie to you guys. I have never been a fan of the alternate reality thing. So when Slav was making these jokes in season 2, I was like, oh, this is funny. And obviously there are alternate realities. I guess that could be a thing. And then when they like actually did it in season 3 and like in episode 4, and it's like a really serious. Actually, at first I thought it wasn't serious. I thought it wasn't serious because Sven was involved, and I thought we were just I thought I was watching a comedy episode at first, because almost like a TMNT thing, because y'all know who Sven is, right? Like like Sven, the character, is Shiro of like the American dub version of Go Lion back in the day was Sven and not Shirogane. So I thought it was going to be a joke episode because we got Slav and Sven here, and then as the episode continued, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Okay, but that means they're taking alternate reality seriously. Oh, wow, okay, I don't know how I feel about this. So, like, when I first watched episode 4, like, I really liked what they did with showing the, and I guess that could be its own talking point, but to quickly summarize, I really liked the idea that in another reality, the Alteans could have easily been the Galra. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just assume because our Alteans are the good guys that Allura is good. In another universe, she caused mass slavery across the galaxy. You know what I mean? Like in this Empress, Empress Allura started a quote unquote peace thing to go across the galaxy, but actually they were taking away the free will of people, which is like, whoa. So like it makes you really think like everyone has the potential to be evil. I really liked that exploration in this episode. But then with the whole alternate reality thing, and the idea that there's this material that can transmute or like be in like other realities or whatever, like it's cool, but it always complicates things so much. And I'm just like, oh no, I'm really concerned on how they're gonna handle this. If you want me to be completely honest, because like if there's a multiverse, if we're going with the multiverse theory, that means there's a multiverse for everything that's ever going to be able to happen ever. And if one of these things that can happen is there could be a portal to another universe, that would have happened in another universe already. And if that happened in another universe already, that wouldn't be a problem for these people who are trying to handle it with what's happening here. So is this the action of that happening in the other universe? But wouldn't it have already happened if there's a universe for every possible reality? Do you get where I'm getting at here? This is the type of stuff that they've just opened, and I'm really hoping they don't make this dumb. To be fair, I think they did a really good job at handling it in episode 7. Once we get the origins of Voltron, I'm like, okay, I'm getting this a bit better now. But like, even still, I'm like, oh no, we've reached alternate realities level of. When Doctor Who did that, that was even too much. Like, and it was really freaky with that too. So, I mean, I'm excited to see where this goes, but I'm still scared. I really liked episode 4 for like what we learned about like what other worlds are potential of, like what the potential of everyone can be, that everyone can be evil, and like, yeah, and Allura's struggle with like seeing her own people be what the Galra kind of were in her own world. So I really liked that. But we're doing alternate realities. It's like a real thing. It's actually like a real big plot point in the show, and yeah. All right, let's do it. I'm ready for it, but I do have my concerns.
Yeah, like I'm definitely concerned. I do have a feeling though they're not gonna go down the like really crazy like all these universes interacting. I do feel they're gonna take the approach of it, kind of like they say at the end of the season, that their interpretation is that Lotor is just gonna basically go into these other worlds, potentially get that universe's like comet to get more of this material, get their quintessence, and then leave. That we're not actually going to be like, oh, we've now established a system in this other alternate reality world, kind of like what the Alteans in episode 4 were like trying to do if they got out of the portal. I feel they kind of, them closing that away was kind of them saying, that's not what we're going to be doing here, where we're going to be dealing with like the same group but from different like realities kind of competing with each other, that it is just going to be our universe, but we're going to like grab like materials from these other realities, and then potentially the main, if we do explore any alternate reality, it is going to be the one where this darkness creature energy thing from the final episode came from, which seemed to be some sort of a reality that was either they didn't go into it enough that we actually saw what like the space was, or that like that reality literally is just quintessence and darkness or whatever. I feel they won't go down the whole Slav kind of crazy point of thing of like characters knowing what happens in their universe and that meaning something for another universe. But I don't really know. Maybe they will do that, but the direction they seem to be taking doesn't seem to be necessarily about that. But Harrison, what are your thoughts on the whole alternate reality focus that we get here in the second half of the season?
I thought it was interesting. Like, I don't have like a like I don't like dislike alternate reality things, but I'm also not like all for it. I'm just kind of like, we'll see where this goes, but I'm interested so far in this. So I like how they introduced it. Again, I thought, it was just like a one-off episode, and then it came back, and it was actually really important. So I was actually impressed with how they kind of did that as far as just introducing it, because they had one-off episodes before. So like, oh, okay, I guess this is kind of our one-off episode of stuff here with some interesting character stuff with Allura and the Alteans who are the evil guys in this one. So I thought that was really interesting. And like Kelly said, like how everyone had the potential to be evil and all that. So I thought it was cool. Like, okay, it's a nice sort of character one-off episode that it worked out. I liked it. Okay, and we're done with this. We're moving on. But then when it came back, I was like, oh, okay, that actually was looped into this. So I really like how that kind of tied it all together nicely. And so I thought that was well done. And then, yeah, the alternate reality thing is interesting. The whole multiverse thing, I also hope they don't do that, because that, like Kelly has brought up, can just bring all kinds of stuff into the mix, because they did that on Flash, and it's, I don't know, it's kind of a hit or miss thing. Like, if you don't go into it too much, you can kind of do it well enough. Like in Flash, they kind of tried to restrain themselves, and I hope here they do the same thing, because you don't want to go into too much, because then it just raises too many things get too complicated, and it's just all this craziness that can be too hard to follow. So I do hope they restrain themselves, and like if they don't think talk about multiverse theory or anything like that, fine, it's cool. I'm actually I prefer that than just be like, no, there's multiverses and blah 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 blah. Like, let's not get into that. There's kind of some alternate realities here and I feel like they're almost kind of using alternate reality as almost like also kind of like an alternate dimension kind of thing, because with the whole quintessence area that Zarkon and all of them went to in at episode 7 it didn't feel like an alternate reality. It felt like an alternate dimension. So I don't know how that is. Maybe alternate realities are just kind of their way of being, well, it's realities, but it's also kind of like different dimensions, and they're just kind of using that term kind of loosely here, which I'd be okay with. And I just hope they don't delve into too much, because like how they can just raise so many questions, and you can go way too complicated, way too quickly. So if we leave the multiverse stuff out of this, I think we'll be fine, and they seem to be tackling it well so far. And I am interested to see the other reality of the quintessence light area. Is that just like where we entered in this our like universe, or are we just in like this weird energy ball or whatever, and if we can get out of it and then we're in space and all that, or is it all just a reality of quintessence and stuff like that? Like it's interesting. So I hope they kind of address these kind of things, because it is interesting to see how it's done, and I'm interested to see where they're going to take it from here. But I'm on board so far, but I do have concerns, like you guys said.
Yeah, can you imagine if they mix up the Shiro is a clone plot with the multiverse stuff? Like, no one will be able to interpret what on earth is happening.
Oh no, yeah, that would suck.
He's a clone, but he's from an alternate universe where the clone program is a different thing, and it just gets really confusing.
Oh God.
But Greg, what are your thoughts on the whole alternate reality stuff that's presented here?
I think, like you guys have said, it definitely can bring up a lot of issues, but I guess I go more along the lines as it's just something else to sort of, I don't know, as far as sort of understanding just sort of the makeup of Voltron and the makeup of how they're sort of, using this power that, seems, almost sort of unlimited to sort of, fuel, I guess, sort of this battle that they have that's been, ongoing for 10,000 years. It doesn't seem, sort of like you said, that they're focusing too much on bringing, the whole sort of multiverse sort of idea into things. I mean, I don't know. I think it could be interesting if they do choose to sort of explore some of these worlds, as long as it doesn't sort of, interfere, I guess, too much with the main story of this particular world. I mean, I don't know, I guess it all sort of depends if any of the other universes, I mean, I guess the one that they left before won't have access to this sort of material, but you could suspect that some other realities or whatever have developed something with these with this sort of trans reality sort of ore. So I don't know, it might be interesting to see how they use it. I mean, I don't think they're going to use it sort of too much. It seems like they're always pretty well minded as far as focusing on the main sort of story plots and the main sort of story beats. So I don't know, it's something that I don't think they're going to do, but I guess we'll have to sort of wait and see.
Definitely, but I guess, Kelly, what's your next talking point?
Okay, so it is my turn again. I actually kind of want to have Pidge and Hunk combined as a talking point this season, and not just because, they had the least development this season, because there wasn't anything to really develop with them right now because of everything going on, but because they also actually, because of what was going on with the other three, had a lot of scenes interacting with each other, as well as, I guess we could also touch upon what's going on with Pidge and how the first episode of season 3 here, she's still looking for Matt. And like all the stuff that they discovered with Matt, like she has a conversation with Karan, right? I actually don't remember the whole thing, but like they find some more clues, but that has not been addressed throughout this whole season. So I'm thinking it's definitely going to be talked about in season 4, which again, I'm pretty sure is still just season 3 production wise. So, so let's talk about those two and Pidge's family, Matt.
Yeah, the Pidge and Matt thing is addressed. The only time it's addressed this season is that first scene where they basically run down that like Pidge has like analyzed the clothing of the people that Matt is with, and they kind of just come to this conclusion that like it's kind of like a mix of things. Like it's not just specific to one like group or like a one like planet or culture or anything like that. That it must be like a group of like rebels in the outer colonies, and then there's this mysterious mask that they're all wearing that must be some sort of a connection determining whatever group it is. And then I think Pidge says like she can like analyze something like the material it's made out of or something like that. Like they mentioned something about like titanium boron, and maybe they can track that, but then they just kind of like go off it for a while. So it doesn't seem like there's any like immediate like, oh, they've discovered a clue right now. I kind of did just take the scene as just we're as the writers kind of saying, yes, Pidge is still focused on this, even though we're not going to address it this season, that she's still looking into this a lot. I didn't really take much of anything out of the actual analysis scene, outside of like there was a kind of funny moment with Karan where he put a cape on and talked about how he was like an interdimensional fashion pirate or something like that. Other than that, like, Pidge and Hunk, yes, as we said, got the least amount of like development this season. They did get a chance towards the end to kind of work together to kind of track Lotor, and that's how the end of the season could even happen in the first place. And they obviously have to, play their roles as like everyone else has changed, so they kind of have to be the two solid people on the team, just so that they aren't creating an even further issue within the team. But yeah, they definitely didn't get the biggest chance to shine. I think Hunk's probably the bigger problem at the moment, just because he kind of hasn't really had much of anything since like the Shay stuff from like the first season, and even that like wasn't necessarily like a huge Hunk arc of stuff. There's still a little bit of obsession within the writing team of just like everything has to be about food with him, and that like the reason you can't pilot the Black Lions because you order people around about food and so on. I still like both of the characters. I'm almost getting to the point with Hunk though, where I feel like, is there even any opportunity to create a character arc with him? I'm kind of just worried that we might get to the end of Voltron overall without Hunk ever having had an actual arc. At least with Pidge, they've kind of clearly set up that like whatever happens with Matt, that's going to be a really big thing, and then whatever they decide to do with their father, that's going to be interesting. And then just in general, like she's already had kind of like her kind of the reveal that she's a girl kind of from the initial season. But yeah, I definitely wanted more. It didn't like stand out to me as like a big thing where like, oh, I'm really annoyed that neither of them got development this season, because it was just 7 episodes that there was a lot of other stuff to cover. But I think if we get through like all of next season without like anything or any hint of anything, that could be a little bit of a problem, and I hope both of them get their chance. Especially Hunk, I think, needs something to just give him a little bit of seriousness to his character. But Greg, what are your thoughts on Pidge and Hunk and their lack of development, but the little things they did do this season?
Yeah, I mean, we do get a little bit about them, and the whole idea with sort of Matt and Pidge's sort of brother, I think is definitely interesting. This definitely has potential, and we know that that's sort of going to be cleared up. I think the main thing is sort of with Hunk and just sort of there not being sort of any sort of clear idea of sort of where his character is sort of going, or where he's sort of going to evolve or develop past sort of his, typical tropes. I mean, we do get to see him sort of stand out a little bit with him and Pidge, and they have their whole sort of like, smart sort of genius moment where they sort of develop the tool to sort of track things. So, we still get to see, every once in a while we get to, remember that Hunk is actually an engineer, and he is, part of the reason why they're sort of here in the first place. He definitely has, skills. It just seems that they don't, give many sort of opportunities for him to actually sort of show that. He's usually just sort of the scaredy cat who pilots the toughest sort of line, which is interesting how that sort of works out. But, it definitely, he's definitely still a fun character to sort of follow around, and, has, interesting sort of dynamic with the team in general. It just, it's just something that they'll have to sort of hopefully sort of expand upon in the future. I think Pidge is definitely sort of more or less on sort of the right track as far as sort of her sort of, character development or her progression. I mean, I do like that they have a couple moments with the whole team where they do have them sort of all sort of express their feelings about sort of Shiro being gone. So we do get to see, a bit more from them, in terms of how they sort of work with the whole group. But, it definitely is something that, they'll have to, or hopefully will expand upon in the coming seasons.
And Harrison, your thoughts on Pidge and Hunk this season?
Yeah, I was a little disappointed that we didn't get as much of them this season. Well, really not much of them at all. Like, I mean, I get that we have to have focus other places. I just would have liked maybe a little bit more, like, again, like I said, the action sequences, maybe just a cool moment or two of them with just a nice action moment or something like that. It would have been nice to just sort of put them in a little bit more. And then with Pidge and her and Matt and just that stuff, like, I guess like their first episode with that is just the writers being like, hey, remember this is still a thing, we haven't forgotten about it. Just kind of a little reminder of Pidge is still looking. Yeah, we're gonna get there, just don't forget about it as they like move on into this season kind of thing. So I do hope in season 4 we actually get at least some sort of development on that, and then I definitely hope we get something with Hunk in season 4 as well, because we haven't really had a whole lot of really any kind of character development with him at all. I mean, there's like some stuff with Shay, but ultimately, I don't know. We need some more substance with him, I feel like, and especially with just how well Lance was handled this season. I think if we get anything like that remotely close to how maybe Hunk is handled next season, that'd be amazing. I just really hope we get just some more focus on those two for sure in season 4, because if we don't, I think that'll definitely be like an issue. It'll see like how they're handled, like maybe if there's just more presence for them in season 4, but maybe not a whole lot of character development. Might be okay with it, just seeing how it'll play out. But I feel like we definitely needs, at least for one of them, that definitely needs to have a big moment in season 4 for sure. So it definitely was a bit bothersome that they weren't really in this season a whole lot. But I mean, they had a few moments here and there, but to me, they didn't feel like enough. They felt they were just kind of like pushed to the background because of all that's going on here, which I understand sometimes has to be done. I just felt like the writers could have made a bit more of an effort to kind of keep them in the loop with things just a little bit more. But I mean, it wasn't a huge thing, I guess you could say, but it definitely was noticeable. And I hope, and as long as it's in season 4, they're acknowledged more so, I'll be a lot more forgiving of it.
And Kelly, your own thoughts?
I mean, yeah, it's ultimately disappointing that Pidge and Hunk get sidelined, but like you kind of understand it, so it's not something that bothered me too much. Maybe, and if anything, it actually probably bothered me a bit more with Pidge because right now all she kind of is the one looking for her brother. You know what I mean? Like, should it like that's kind of her main personality is just being smart and looking for her brother, which like I felt like she was more interesting and kind of dynamic in the first season when we were first learning about her, when we first discovered she was a girl, you know, like I felt like there was more to her than that. So for that to just kind of be pushed to the side until they actually get to the Matt arc, it's a little annoying. As for Hunk, I agree, like he still has a bit of the food jokes, but I actually think he was improved on this season because you'll notice there was a lot less of those jokes and like he actually was doing some helpful science stuff, you know what I mean? Not once but twice, you know, like, well, sort of once, but like combined is like two different things, sort of, when he makes the castle into the scanner to find the rest of the crystal or whatever that was stolen. That was really, and obviously the conversation Pidge and him have, and it's like genius talk, and Lance is like, I have no idea what they just said. You know what I mean? So it's reminding you, Hunk is incredibly smart. Last night I rewatched the first episode of the first show with my dad because now my dad's interested in watching, and the Hunk is the one that found the blue lion, guys. Like he created the machine to search for the same type of weight, the numbers or whatever. Like he did this whole like sciencey engineering mumbo jumbo I didn't understand. And like we forget how smart Hunk actually is because he's often the scaredy cat who likes food in a giant big lion. Like so I feel like Hunk actually has all these different personalities put into one, but often they're showcased very one-sided. You know what I mean? He's not like, they don't do a good enough job writing Hunk like in the sense of like he's all these different things. Like in one scene he's one thing, in one scene he's another thing. And I'm hoping that like over time we really get a sense of like this is who Hunk is and this is how he can grow. Because I agree, Morgan. It's like, well, when are we going to get some type of Hunk arc? Are we ever going to get a Hunk arc? Is he just kind of always going to be this way? Or does he really have no problem and like we can't expand on this a bit? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Hunk in the future. But I do like how in this season he was finally allowed to be smart again, unlike last season. You know, like that's another thing that bothered me about season 2. Constant food jokes. Like every other thing was a food joke, and that was really annoying. Like in the first season it was fine a couple times, but like in the second season 2 it was so annoying. Season 3 I think so far has put him on a much better track. I hope anyway, because there's still the food jokes, but not as much. All I ask is that there's a balance to these things, and I think season 3 did that. So, and with Pidge, I'm really excited to get into the Matt arc. We better get to that soon because I really, that's gotta grow. That's gotta improve.
I almost feel like the only option, at least maybe with stuff set up, is like to maybe have Hunk be the main one suspicious of the new Shiro and have him be the one to maybe figure out stuff about the Galra like cloning program, Quran or whatever it's called, because like obviously Pidge is probably going to be busy next season or season 5 dealing with Matt and whatever that's going on. You have kind of Lance, Shiro, Keith dealing with the whole leadership role of the team and figuring out their place, so kind of leaves him still out on his own, and that'd be a cool thing to give him. And that like if he is a robot, like he's the engineer, it's fitting somehow. But we'll have to see. At least there's an option potentially for him. But Greg, what's your next talking point?
Sure. I guess I'll go into one of the more interesting parts of episode 7, and that is of course sort of the backstory, but I guess just sort of in general, just sort of the whole idea of how they went about sort of presenting it. I know it's something that we've mentioned before in other casts, but just sort of how they went, pretty much dedicated most of the episode. I mean, there was some sort of, overview and some narration by Karan, but for the most part they just sort of let it play out, the whole sort of history of the Lions. I thought that was really sort of good.
Yeah, definitely. This was something that was needed, and I like how they just kind of had this simple setup of just like, okay, we're making some connections here with the whole Comet stuff and Voltron being made of it, but we kind of at this stage need to know, and it's just like we as the audience, them in the show as the new Paladins, they should know why this all started, and they just finally come out and ask about it, knowing that it's probably going to be difficult to talk about because it involves talking about the death of Alfor, the destruction of planets and so on. And I really appreciated how they just kind of, Karan started it. He kind of came in at times to kind of give the overall narration because it is a backstory, but we just kind of let it play out. And I think it was needed, and I felt like they executed on it really well. And I think it's one of the things with this show is like after season 2, I was kind of worried about the show's ability to execute on some of this stuff that it set up, and I feel like this gave me a lot of confidence because I was very, very happy with how this origin story played out, and that they, I think gave the fans a lot of what they wanted, and that like we got the names and like looks of the initial batch of paladins. We got the kind of more personal kind of connection between everyone, how and why Voltron was created, and setting up other stuff with the characters like where Hagar comes in and so on, and potentially what like an even greater threat than like just the Galra Empire is. So I felt like it was really one of those like end of season episodes that made you really like, oh, that explains this and this from what we've seen already, and now knowing all this, oh, so this is what this means going forward. And that obviously one of the main things this episode explains is why the Galra are so like obsessed with mining quintessence anywhere they can get it, because obviously the two leaders of the Galra Empire, Hagar and Zarkon, need it to stay alive as long as they have, and they're used to like really pure quintessence from basically like an alternate reality, but in their own reality they can only get it from like mining it from oh god, what's that special animal called that Allura has the connection with, the kind of planet size. Yeah, Balmera. It comes like naturally from those. They created the special weapon last season to suck it out of planets. This explains why they're going to all of these lengths, because they fundamentally need Voltron, the only thing made of the comet material, to get into the alternate dimension to get it back. And I thought that connection came together really nicely at the end of this episode of like explaining like why they were after Voltron so much, and then why the obsession with quintessence as well, and then just overall character-wise it was really well done as well. But I'm sure we'll get into the specifics as we go through this. But Harrison, just overall, what were your thoughts on the big flashback episode, basically like Voltron's version of Beginnings in a way?
I thought it was fantastic. Like, I purposely didn't read like any of the Netflix little text or whatever. I can't think of words right now, but yeah, that I like it popped up, and I purposely like didn't look at it. Like anytime the episode popped up, and I looked away from like little snippet of pictures of what was going to happen, because I just wanted to watch it and let it play out in the show. So as I was watching it, and they're like, so what's going on with like the Voltron and the origin? I was like, wait, are we about to get the origin story? Like I was like I made a note in my notes. I was like, Voltron origin, like question marks and stuff like that, and then started going through, and I was like, yes. And then I was like, wait a minute, are we getting like a a Zarkon like evil origin? Then I just like wrote origin of everything, because they just gave us so much, and it was just so unexpected. But I was just so happy, and the fact that it was also just the last episode, like I thought it was like perfect timing, and I was just like so excited that when the flashback started, and even when it first started, I thought it was just going to be maybe a little short couple minute flashback, and then we're on with the episode, big final battle or something like that. And so but no, it just kept going, and then it just like Karan's narration stopped, and it just let the story just play for itself, and it became the episode. And I was got super excited. I was like, oh wait, no, this is gonna be the episode. This is the whole episode. Like it was just amazing, and I just loved it. And I also really liked how we're learning at the same time as the Paladins, but also Hagar is learning it through going into like Zarkon's mind. So it's like the villains and the heroes are both learning this story as we are seeing it as well. So I just really liked it, and I just liked how it was done. I liked how they had to take up. Oh, I'm about to sneeze, or not. Anyway, I just like how they used like basically the entire episode just to tell the whole story, and just they gave us more than what we were, at least for what I was expecting, more than what I was asking for, and it was just fantastic, not just to find out the story, but just to see the story unfold. And my only major issue is I just wish it would have been like an hour long, so we could have had a complete, really long story. Because like the ending, they kind of montaged and narrated through the end of it. But I mean, I kind of understand why time constraints and all that. So the only issue is I wanted more flashback, but it took up the whole episode, so I can't really be all that upset about it because what we got was just so amazing. I just wanted to see more of it. Like I almost want like a whole spin-off series just on these original guys and their stories and everything like that. But I don't know if it was purposeful that they didn't tell us what happened with a lot of things, and that ending kind of they kind of rushed through it. It was like I feel like it maybe was on purpose. Otherwise, they could have just thrown in a line of Zarkon came and killed off all the paladins, and then and everything like that. So I feel like it may have been a purposeful thing where they're saving that for maybe a season 4 moment or something like that, because it's gonna have a bit more meaning in the story there or something like that. So I think that I could just be like, I don't know, looking on something a little too long. But I feel like if they wanted to tell us the full story, they could have done a quick way of Zarkon, killed everyone and went through this, and this is what happened, final stand and all that. But they didn't, so I feel like there's a purpose to that. But I just loved it. It was definitely one of my favorite episodes of just the series, just because it was just so unexpected and just so well done.
Yeah, it was definitely really good. I think the slight criticism would be that like it was a little rushed towards the end with I think mainly just with regards to like it was just like almost like just a bullet point. Oh yeah, and then Zarkon killed Alfor. It was just like a really quick shot, cut away from it, to the point where like I almost feel like they might come back to this at some point and maybe show some bigger dialogue moment between the two of them and what they talked about just before he was killed, and just this really kind of sad moment. And that this episode reminded me like of Beginnings to some degree, but also of the Avatar and the Fire Lord as well, with the whole some aspects of the relationship in terms of like it being this friendship. There was a strain on the friendship. They came back together, but then it was a betrayal in the end. It was similar to that, and it was just missing that kind of bit at the end of just their kind of interaction right at the very end of their relationship. But Kelly, overall, what were your thoughts on getting the origin story as the end of the season?
Yeah, I thought this was awesome. I knew we were gonna get some like backstory, but like Harrison said, when like Coran's doing the narration and then narration goes away and it just starts showing them, I was like, oh, we're getting like the whole story here. We're getting like the whole episode is gonna be about the team, the original Voltron team. We don't know exactly what we're getting, but we're probably gonna figure out why Zarkon is evil. You know what I mean? And what happened, and we did, and I thought that was really, really cool. And I don't have many problems with this episode, honestly. This is definitely one of the best episodes of the show. It's very well written for the little amount of time they had to develop who these people were. I mean, to be fair, they do only focus on Alfor and Zarkon the most. The other three are just kind of like there. But you get what their beliefs are about, and you understand their basic personalities. Like, you know that they're... my favorite part of it, well, one of my favorite parts of it, is that they were a team before they were Voltron. Like it's kind of like how Rava and Juan were friends before the Avatar existed. You know what I mean? Like the idea that it's similar to that. It's not like Voltron created these people. These people created Voltron. You know what I mean? I really like that idea. So that was really cool. As for the ending being a little bit rushed, I actually kind of disagree, only because of one thing. The stuff that that Coran is explaining at the end is the stuff we already know. Like, we know. Like, we got to watch all of this new stuff that we've never known before. But the end is particularly, you know the war that happened, that Zarkon destroys them, you kind of know these things based on the first episode, or like the first season when they were going through little things here and there. So like it makes sense to me that they went past that part. And I mean, I do kind of wish we got the fight with Zarkon and Alfor, but at the same time, I thought the shot that they did show was a really beautiful summary of it. Like, just both of them standing back and back, like you could tell like that a clash just happened and Alfor just collapses and dies. I thought that was like a really good dramatic shot. So I'm personally okay with it, but and maybe we could have gotten the actual fight. That would have been cool. But I get why they rushed past the ending, is because this is all the information we do understand. This is where we know what happened afterwards. So at least that's my thoughts on it. The episode is fantastic, though. I really do love it.
Mm. And Greg, just overall, your thoughts on the backstory episode? We'll get into some of the specifics after this, but just your overall thoughts for now.
Yeah, no, overall, I really enjoyed it. I think it played out really well. It showed, all the sort of key beats that we sort of needed to see and needed to sort of know about, sort of the formation and sort of, just all our characters and how they sort of met and how they, were a team and just sort of, just the beginnings of Voltron. I think that was all sort of laid out pretty well. And just, for me, for the most part, it executed it all in, a good amount of time that we had for the specific episode without sort of glazing over anything that was, that you really sort of needed to know. So no, for me, it worked really well.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, let's get into some of the specifics here. So the first thing, obviously, as Kelly just said there, was that they established that these 5 leaders who would become the 5 paladins were kind of came together as this group. They made this formal agreement between their nations, their planets, to kind of form this kind of alliance. And it went from being just an agreement, like a political agreement, to actually the leaders all becoming friends, and they kind of talk about this warrior bond that they all developed, which they show quite nicely with the idea of like Alfor coming in. And like I like what they did here, in that they've always established that like Alfor is this like awesome like king from the past, and like he comes in, he's really cool, he like takes out 3 guys and then he gets knocked over, and it's just like, no, actually Zarkon's the really powerful one in the team. And they all kind of joke about Alfor because he's actually just an alchemist who kind of is okay with a sword. And so this is where they kind of established the whole idea of like, yeah, Alfor is kind of like the heart of the team in a way, but Zarkon kind of is the leader overall. And so we get this introduction of everyone. So we have obviously Alfor, the red paladin from Altea, Zarkon, the black paladin from Dibazal, Grygan, the yellow paladin for Rignorath, Trigel, the green paladin from the Daltirian belt, and then Blate, the blue paladin from Nalquad. And like, yeah, we don't get a ton on the other 3. It's mainly Zarkon and Alfor, but you definitely get the sense of just kind of knowing the kind of type of character that suits like the yellow, green, and kind of blue line, kind of what to expect from them. And you get a little bit of the dynamic here just in their personalities, but overall, I'm happy with this introduction. Like, there's obviously opportunities for like comics and stuff like that to go back and maybe cover like an interesting mission that they all undertook, but just as the basic introduction, I thought this was a well done thing of like, yeah, this is the team of 5. They knew each other from before Voltron, and they came together when Voltron was needed, which we'll get into in a minute. But I suppose, Kelly, what are your thoughts on knowing now the full roster of Voltron here, the original team? What are your thoughts on all these characters?
Yeah, I really like them. It made me want to see more of their adventures and stuff, I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe they could do like a comic of some of their like what they were, like what they did as a team. It's kind of sad because like you get why obviously the show isn't about them, but they did such a good job at introducing us to these characters in this team and like how it works. Like the writing is so well done that you just want to see more of them, even though things are going to go to crap really fast. You know what I mean? Even though this ends very poorly, you still kind of want to see when things were good. You know what I mean? And I kind of liked their dynamic, like when they're first talking at the table or whatever. And they're all talking kind of similarly to Team Voltron in a way, but like they're making fun of more Zarkon and Alfor than they are making fun of the others, even though it's kind of interesting how it's done. Which, by the way, nice of them to have the blue paladin flirt with the guy. That was good inclusion. And then Zarkon's like, stop fraternizing with the servants, and Alfor is just making fun of him for being so serious all the time, and then them making fun of Alfor. Like they're all picking on each other, but like in like a positive way, almost more positive than like how our Voltron is constantly picking on Lance all the time. Like it feels like they've been friends for longer, and it feels like they've really established themselves as a team, and that's why their Voltron was so good. That's why they established that they were the defenders of the universe. Like when it was the beginning of Voltron. You know what I mean? Like, they really did do so much, and then it all fell down really fast. But yeah, I really liked. Oh, by the way, that callback to the leg was a really good joke. The guy being like, "I'm a leg," like that was. I don't know. Like, I'm waiting for like a fourth one of that at this point, because like I don't know. That was just a really nice reference to that, and we got more explanation of what was going on with Alfor when he was making these lions. You know what I mean? Like, how the lions connect to the team, like through a psychic link. You know what I mean? As if like the technology has evolved so much in these lions that they're able to. It's like Pacific Rim. You know what I mean? It's like Pacific Rim. Like, you have to have the two minds that work well together to fight the giant robot. It's kind of like that with the psychic link of it. I don't know, man. I really like that explanation, and I like seeing these personalities and how they reflect with our Voltron versus their version of Voltron. It's just really well done. I was really impressed by it.
Yeah, definitely. Like, Grogan, the yellow paladin, definitely is very much suits the yellow line. Just the fact that his main attack was the spinning head smash thing, and he was just like, yeah, that seems like something that paladin would do. But Harrison, what were your thoughts on the original lineup of the Paladins, these 5 characters?
I really liked that we got their introduction, and yeah, like the moments of them just like sitting around the table, just like you could just feel that they were just a group of friends. Like, it was just like Kelly said, the writing was just so well done. Like, you felt the friendship there that had been there for years and years, and it was just really cool, the fact that they were, you know, a coalition of worlds that had come together. And the sort of agreement of like peace and stuff like that, and it like that makes sense. Yeah, of course that would exist in the universe. And so it's just all these different leaders from these planets, and they're just a group of friends before Voltron's even like a thing at all, or even just like an imagine. Just it's nothing at all. It's like, so I just like how they're just a group of friends, and you just could feel the friendship there so well. It was just really, really nice, and I just liked getting all the different characters, and it was just kind of interesting just to see this the way the world is then, and seeing like Zarkon and Alfor for sure was very interesting to see them in these 2 different like interesting elements and stuff like that. And then yeah, the whole when they formed Voltron, and the joke about being the leg, like, oh my god, it was just fantastic. Like, they didn't need to do that, but the fact that they did it, it was just fantastic, and I loved it so much. Like, I just thought it was fantastic, and just everything about it. Like, yeah, like Kelly said, it makes sense that they established this legend because they were friends for years before this. So, and they fought as friends and stuff like that. So of course they'd be like this well-oiled machine of people that could do so much good, and it makes sense that they would become a legendary defender and everything like that. It just makes so much sense, and it was just so cool to finally like not only like find out who they are, but just like see them in action and everything like that. I thought it was just really cool, and I liked the introduction of all of them, and it just did a really good job. Like, yeah.
And Greg, your thoughts on the original group of Paladins?
Yeah, no, I think the original group was pretty cool. I mean, like you guys have said, it definitely seems like they were such a good team ahead of time that, you know, when they did have the opportunity to become sort of Voltron and sort of connect with their lions, that is sort of just, you know, just sort of trickled down, and they didn't have any issues, you know, sort of working as a team, even when, you know, it seemed like Zarkon and Alfor were sort of, you know, not on sort of the best of terms. They were still able to sort of, you know, form some sort of bond and able to sort of create Voltron, which, you know, is not always sort of a easy thing to do. So you definitely can see how well they sort of were coordinated and worked as a team. So no, I think it's definitely interesting to see, you know, how they showed us the original set of Paladins and how they sort of worked as a group, and just sort of how them as sort of each their own sort of being their individual sort of leaders, how they were able to sort of, you know, work together as one person, as one sort of group for like a common goal. So you can sort of, you know, see how, you know, their sort of, you know, their legend sort of would have been built, and how it sort of would have lasted sort of, you know, 10,000 years, which is, you know, a pretty long time, especially considering, you know, a good chunk of that, you know, Voltron wasn't around. So it's kind of interesting that the legend lasted that long, and, you know, how sort of powerful it still sort of seems to be in this sort of universe. So it's definitely a huge feat to behold.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we move on. I suppose the context for why Voltron forms, because like as we said, they're friends before they become Voltron. But the reason Voltron is made is because at one of their kind of banquets, basically, a comet strikes Dibazol, which is Zarkon's homeworld. And the comet is obviously one of the ones that is filled with this trans-reality ore. And then when Alfor extracts the comet and begins to do research on it, the hole that is left is actually a reality portal into a different reality. And basically what happens is that Alfor brings in Onerva, who we later find out is Hagar, as well as her cat Kova. She's an alchemist who's established to be like the best alchemist from Altea. And this is where Zarkon meets her, and immediately the two seem to like each other, and then be later established that they did get married and so on. But the focus that we get here is that Alfor tends to focus on just the comet specifically, and then quintessence as a energy source, whereas Onerva focuses on the rift itself, and then like everything about quintessence and what it can be used for. And they do establish that like there's periods where basically the team isn't together as much, because they have these whole kind of times or years basically where they don't see each other. They show the birth of Allura here. She's given this helmet as a gift by Zarkon at this point. We get the detail here of like Alfor's really set on using quintessence as an energy source, and we get the idea of how important it is, and just that Onerva seems to have kind of convinced Zarkon to do even further research into the rift, and we can see that maybe things are going too far here. She's a bit obsessed with this, and they introduce that there's this dark energy source / creature, which Karan calls it. That's the only thing that has been alive that has come through the portal that they've been able to like keep, that's remained stable on this side of the portal. So we'll leave it here for now, and the big thing here obviously is that the comet is what changes everything. This comet is what obviously they form Voltron about, and then this dark energy source is what they basically form Voltron to actually fight once it's revealed that this is this out of control dark energy beast type thing. This universe is Vatu, effectively. Greg, what were your thoughts on this, the introduction of Onerva here, and I suppose, did you immediately realize that this is the direction that they were going in, that this character was Hagar and so on?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like that's the route that they were going to go on, which isn't, necessarily a bad route. I mean, you can see the connection that they have, sort of pretty obviously sort of early on. So it was just interesting to see, sort of the final sort of reveal of that, and sort of what that could mean for the future. So I don't know, I think that was actually a pretty interesting part. I mean, you always sort of wonder sort of who Hagar is, and we know that she's sort of Altean, as was indicated in the previous season. So it's nice to finally sort of get the full reason sort of behind that, and to get the whole sort of story about that. I think that was for the most part was done pretty well. I like how they actually chose to do that sort of reveal here. So no, I think it's definitely interesting how the comet came about, and just sort of how that sort of was like basically the spark for everything for the legend to become, and just sort of for all this sort of I don't know, for everything that sort of happened here. I think it's for me, for the most part, it works as far as being the crux of everything.
Yeah, I like the angle as well of just like Alfor and Onerva are both scientists basically, but like Alfor knows, I suppose, what to use it for and when to stop, and then Onerva, it's kind of implied that because of exposure to quintessence, and she kind of begins to lose her mind a bit, becomes way too obsessed, and obviously uses the excuse of just like, you should never stop scientific advancement, otherwise you're not a scientist, which is, it's a bit of a trope, but it kind of works for this situation in terms of what they're trying to do. But Kelly, what were your thoughts on this, the introduction of Onerva here, and I suppose this dark energy source is potentially pure evil within this universe, but maybe?
Yeah, I thought this was really well done. As soon as I saw Onerva, I was like, is this is Hagar, right? But I didn't know what would lead to the point of it, and I wasn't 100% sure. But I was just really like excited to see this new character. And like what they're doing, you know, like how Allura, and that's the thing too, I never thought about it, but like Allura is like an alchemist, you know what I mean? Like he's the, which I guess in their world means like scientist, which I really like, because alchemy is usually seen as like, I mean, it's still science, alchemy is still science, but when I think of alchemy, I tend to think of like a magic-y science, but I kind of like how it's more of like a broad sense of like, the, like less like, I don't know, more about the elements, more about like elements and like the earth and stuff like that than it is about like, you know, other scientific aspects. So it's just cool to see these really, how smart the Alteans are, you know what I mean, how advanced they are. I remember, because again, I did just rewatch the first episode of the whole show since season 1, and Shiro's just like, how did you develop all this stuff 10,000 years ago? You know what I mean? Like, he was like, this is insane. And like, it's just that they were like one of the greatest alien races like ever, I guess, if they were able to do this in the first place. And I really like that development. It's like world building, you know. It was great to learn about. As for like her character, it's interesting to see what happened with her, because like it, yeah, it's a little cliche, I'll admit, the whole like, you know, we shouldn't stop our science, or then you're not a scientist. But I liked how she said it. She's like, the ancients thought that lightning came from bows or something like that. But now we know better. We need to learn, if we want to get better as people, we need to learn and study this stuff to understand it. You know what I mean? So like, as obviously bad as this is going to go, the argument isn't technically wrong. You know what I mean? Like, she doesn't like ignorance. She doesn't like not knowing the truth behind things. So it makes sense that she wants to push to get answers, even if it leads to more problems, I guess. She cares more about knowledge than she does about the safety of others, and that's just how she is. And Zarkon loves her for it, you know what I mean? And that's his decision to agree with her and be together, you know what I mean? It's ultimately, like, I do think they truly love each other. It's just a thing where, like, they each let the other have influence. It's pretty crazy, actually. For as little as we get of them, you kind of get it at the same time, you know what I mean? Like, and their introduction, oh my god, their introduction was so cute. I was laughing so hard when he was like, I'll help any way I can, I must go. Yeah. Like he said like, I must go really fast, and like walked away, but his face was just like, oh my god. Like, it kind of is, isn't it like interesting, because like, this is Zarkon we're talking about. Yeah. This is like that Zarkon, and to see like that he was just a person like everyone else, it's like really weird. And I think he's voiced by someone else. Like they actually got a different voice actor for him to really get across that like this is like not the Zarkon we know now, but technically is the Zarkon we know now. So I really liked all of this. I just liked how all this was set up. I really have no complaints. Actually, there is one complaint I do have, a little bit, but it's just that it seemed like Unnerva and Allura had a normal relationship when they were first talking to each other, but the very next scene we see them talking to each other with, like, Unnerva kind of has this attitude with him before there's even any disagreements. She's kind of like, it was obviously just part of, like, she said it was customary gesture. Like, she seemed like really annoyed at him, and I was like, oh, where did that come from? And I guess that's to imply that they've had disagreements in their scientific studies before. But, like, I was just surprised to see that she was already that cold that fast. That was a little bit weird to me. And you also have to take into question, why was she getting so absorbed in by the quintessence and he wasn't, even though they were both working on the same project? I would argue it's also, like, even though, yeah, technically the quintessence, quote unquote, was making her go evil, and how she was being exposed to it, I do think it also was just her personality. I think that's just honestly how she is, you know what I mean? I think her personality already drew her closer to the quintessence, and then the quintessence slowly started to do something, because Allura easily could have been just as corrupted. He was using the same technology. He was making lions out of it, you know what I mean? But like, he wasn't being corrupted like she was. So it's interesting to see how quintessence affects each individually. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one, because like, they say it's the quintessence, but like, there's also the factor of just Allura wasn't anywhere near the dark stuff for all that time, whereas she had taken the dark creature out of the portal and like put it there, whereas like, I almost take it as like the real implication is that Quran telling the story isn't really aware of exactly what the dark creature energy thing is, and that's what's kind of been influencing her and changing her. I think the quintessence obviously doesn't help that she was right next to the portal that was emanating the stuff. Whereas I think Alfor was kind of using safer amounts of it or something like that. Is kind of the implication that I took. But yeah, definitely like just seeing over the course of the episode her personality kind of change, and that she's kind of like very kind of sweet in the first scene that you meet her. She's like very happy to meet Zarkon. Then the next time you meet her, she's very kind of blunt. Then it's kind of like on the verge of craziness, and then like complete madness, basically. That you really do see it kind of change over time. But Harrison, what are your thoughts on I suppose the introduction into the backstory here of Onerva?
I liked it a lot. Like, I kind of knew it was Hagar from the beginning, because as soon as Hagar went to Zarkon, and she had like a little quick flash of scenes put before her, and you see a version of her younger self, and I was like, oh, was that Hagar? And then we see her. I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Hagar. And I thought it was really interesting that she and Zarkon were married. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, it had never occurred to me that if Zarkon has a son, obviously that son has a mother, and she had some kind of relationship with Zarkon. Like, that I had never like connected the dots at all or anything like that. So it was interesting to see Zarkon have a relationship with someone, and it was, before either of them were like evil. So I thought that was really interesting. And yeah, the moment where he first meets her, and he's just like, oh yeah, I'll go. I have to go now. But I thought it was just like interesting. Like, we've never, like, he's like the big all bad evil villain, and we just saw him like nervous because of like effectively a new crush or something like that. So I thought that was just really interesting and kind of funny just to see like the big evil villain in this different kind of light. So I mean, like, imagine if we saw like Ozai like get shy and nervous around Ursa. That would have been crazy. It would have been amazing. But so it was just interesting to really see like the completely different side of Zarkon and Hagar, because I kind of figured it was her from the beginning, like I said. So, and see their relationship develop and just see them get married, like, it was, I liked that. I was like, okay, this is really interesting. I'm liking this. And yeah, you can see her personality change very much, so, because first she meets, like, she's an Alfor, like, it seems like they're friends and partners, and because they're both scientists and stuff like that. And then again with he's giving the birthday present to Allura for the new baby and all that, and she comes off as almost cold, and is just like, doesn't even like look at him. She's just constantly tapping away on her computer and everything like that. So, and then of course it progressively gets worse and worse, as do her looks. Like, just the hair gets all crazy and the skin gets darker and purple, and it's just interesting to see how her deterioration. You can see it happens over the course of years, and Zarkon is just kind of with it. So I thought that was really interesting, and I feel like it probably is a combination of her personality and then also just being around contestants all the time. And Alfor probably did treat it with more caution, probably used more safety measures than she did. So I could believe that she would be less safe around it. Therefore, she got more exposed to it, and that's why she became more obsessed and crazy with it. But also, I feel like it is just her personality. Like that comment she made about lightning being like arrows from the gods or something like that, I thought was really nice. And like, it's a very good point. Like, science is something that's ever going, and she's someone that wants to pursue it to the very end. And I mean, and her character shows that here. She's just constantly goes until it effectively kills her. So I thought it was really interesting, and I really liked seeing it.
Mm-hmm. And the remainder of the flashback is basically that at this stage the darkness is kind of erupting out of the portal. They can only basically keep it in check by putting a particle barrier around it. And it's during this time that Alfor comes up with the countermeasure, which is his project, which turns out to be the Lions and Voltron. Though I suppose he isn't fully aware that like Voltron is an aspect of these 5 lines, just that he's created these, lion-shaped ships effectively that have these psychic links, and he brings obviously his group together. They each connect with their line, and they come at the right point to fight the darkness, which just erupts from the particle barrier. And we get a cool fight between this darkness, which comes together as like a kind of monster, and they eventually manage to kind of defeat it using the sword. But the result after this fight is that the portal is still open, though they've defeated the darkness, kind of quote unquote. But both Unnerva and then also Zarkon want to keep the portal open and not close it. They're not concerned with the danger, whereas Alfor is, and this starts the kind of rift between Zarkon and Alfor. They do kind of go on and say that, like, they, despite their differences, you know, they managed to still come together as a team, and it was during this time skip that we get in the flashback that they really became a legendary team over the course of the years. But the big change that happens here is that the rift eventually destabilizes planet Dibazol. Zarkon's kind of concerned. He's putting safety measures in place, but Alfor's like, if you don't close the portal, your planet's going to be destroyed, ripped apart. And Unnerva very clearly has kind of lost herself to the quintessence here, and eventually they kind of established, like, she collapses after a disagreement between Zarkon and Alfor, and basically they form this plan to quote unquote close the rift, though in reality it's just for Zarkon to get inside the portal using Voltron. And effectively what happens is, once they get inside, they enlarge the portal, Zarkon jumps out with Unnerva, and the darkness kind of passes through them and kind of possesses both of them. You see Zarkon's eyes glow, and it obviously goes straight through Unnerva. And then when they come out, they're both revealed to be dead. They basically say that they both died, but both came back to life at their funerals. And after this point, to close the portal, Alfor had to destroy planet Dibazol. That was the only way to destroy the portal, but he did evacuate everyone beforehand, and it's Zarkon, without the context of this, being informed that his planet was destroyed, that kind of causes the, like, want for revenge from Zarkon. And this is where they kind of rush through it a little bit, but get the information that we kind of know. He destroyed Altea for revenge, killed Alfor, and the plan was set in place to separate the paladins of Voltron, because that's what Zarkon needed, because they were kept alive because of quintessence, as they explained earlier on, with Unnerva's cat being kept alive for years with quintessence as well. And that is the flashback. Very, very interesting reveals here. I like that they basically explain here that Zarkon and, like, Hagar are only kind of really, I suppose, necessarily evil because they're sort of possessed by this darkness, that, like, to some degree, yes, they are more prone to it because of their personalities, but, like, they weren't fully evil. It's almost like this is using some negative emotions and feelings that they have and kind of amplifying it to the point where they're actually evil. So that's an immediate new angle on things, in that, you know, it could present some interesting stuff with Lotor potentially being aware of this. And what do we do if we ever, like, get this darkness out of those two? Do they just instantly die, or are they still alive again? And there's just a lot of interesting, like, angles to take on it, but I really like how they used the destruction of the planet as, like, a major plot point in all of this, because we knew the planet was destroyed from last season, and it was, like, a big thing with the Black Line and, like, Zarkon, but now we get the full, like, I suppose, context for that it was, like, this big point in the war between the two of them. But Harrison, what are your thoughts on the kind of end of this kind of backstory here?
I thought it was great. Like, I really liked, you're seeing, like, the little montage of Voltron being the legendary defender, and the whole portal thing with the destabilization. And I do like how they said, like, even though they had disagreements about closing or the portal, leaving it open, how they were still able to come together as a team. And it shows that they truly were friends, because they respected each other's differences and differences of opinions on this matter and stuff like that. Because, like, it is Zarkon's planet, so it is ultimately his decision, and Alfor respects that, even if he does disagree with it. But then it gets to the point where it's just like he's saying it's destabilizing the whole planet, and Zarkon is not really fully taking that into consideration and, I guess, believing that. It's only until Hagar is like, about to die, and is just, I think it's the part where she's just, like, muttering quintessence, like, constantly as she's in the bed, where he comes up with a plan. Okay, you know what? Let's quote unquote close the portal, and convinces everyone. And you could understand why everyone was fooled, because like, since their trusted friend, of course they would not think that he would betray them, especially when his whole planet seems to be at risk. And so then they open the portal and then go into the portal, and then all of a sudden everyone notices that he and Hagar are out there, and it's just like this crazy moment where at first I thought, like, oh crap, they're just going to get overpowered on quintessence, and then maybe that's why they're evil. But then like the darkness swirls in and just like you said, it like just possesses them and stuff like that. So they're like sort of morphed with like the amplified with the quintessence, but also this darkness, and that's why they're like can live forever, but also why kind of like they're so evil. So I really like that, and they get out there and like they are dead. So or if like it is interesting, like are they? I don't know, like is it like did they die now that the darkness is just controlling their bodies? But like it still seems like it's them. They're just, I don't know. It's kind of confusing as to why they died or whatever. I guess they just got overloaded, but then brought back somehow. So that was interesting. And like Alfor made the right decision of, okay, well now the whole planet's about to collapse and we need to get these people off of it. And then do you destroy the planet? You destroy this rift so nothing else happens and everything like that. Like it makes sense. But we're just Zarkon wakes up. He doesn't know any of that. He just sees that and then just says, it's time to kill everyone. One thing I didn't quite, I'm not necessarily like, but I just thought it was a bit odd. Like, all of his citizens know why the planet was destroyed. I don't think Alfor would have just kept it a secret as to why he destroyed a planet. I feel like that would have been a widely known thing. Like, hey, this portal is collapsing. It could destroy not just this planet, but like the solar system and surrounding planets and things like that. Like, I feel like it would have been a widely known thing. So I don't really get why his citizens were all like, yeah, we need revenge because Alfor saved our lives. I don't know. I just thought that was a little odd. But I get like he's the leader, so they kind of have to follow him. But like they said, like the way they just said it in the show, it felt like everyone in like the Galra Empire was just like, yeah, let's go kill all of them because they destroyed our planet, even though that actually saved us and he evacuated the planet anyway. But I just thought that was interesting to see it with the purple eyes. Like you understand now why he's evil. I thought that was really interesting. And yeah, even though I wish the montage thing would have been a lot longer, I still liked how they did it, and what we saw was still good. Of seeing how they destroyed Altea, and then seeing like that one shot we got of Zarkon and Alfor when they were fighting and Alfor died was good. And then the whole looping the story around of, okay, we know the Lions got sent off, and then Zarkon took over and everything like that. So I just thought it was really well done, and I really liked basically all of it.
Yeah, and I suppose the only thing I'd add onto that is just that my interpretation of like the very ending in terms of like what the darkness is kind of doing is that it seems like Hagar is like the one who's like most like controlled by this dark energy, because as far as I'm aware, she's the only character who has magic in like the entire show that we've known so far, because the druids from the previous seasons aren't actually like living things. They just seem to be like magical entities that she's made. So she's the only one who kind of has magic, and obviously the color of that magic is the same purple as the darkness. So that's my interpretation, that like she didn't seem to be like have any sort of magic powers prior to that because she's like a scientist. So the reason she's the like wizard witch is because this darkness has given her the power of like dark magic, and then Zarkon, the influence on him is just that it's to some degree helps him like remain alive, but also just kind of amplifies his rage or like issues that he has to make him evil. But it definitely makes it really interesting that Hagar is unaware of her past until she kind of connects with like the like darkness within Zarkon and gets his full like interpretation of everything that happened. So it's a lot of really interesting stuff to definitely speculate on. But Kelly, what are your thoughts on the end of this backstory?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I think it's all incredibly well done. Particularly the scene where we see how Enerva has been using quintessence to keep Kova alive, the cat alive. I think it's Kova, Sorry, I don't remember. And how it's affecting her and affecting them, ultimately both of them, and Alfor's finally seeing how mad they've kind of gone with this power. You know what I mean? Like, and it reminded me a lot of the conversation between Sozin and Roku when you know, he was saying, we can use this, like, we can use our piece to expand it across the world. And Alfor's like, that sounds like war. Like, Alfor is kind of, I mean, I'm sorry, Roku was like, that sounds like, you know, like you want to, like, you know, go to war and destroy everything, you know what I mean? And that's kind of what Zarkon says here, too, you know what I mean? And in regards to that, he's like, he literally says, we can rule the world. You're like, whoa, where did that come from? Like, we can, like, take, like, what is he saying? Damn, I'm trying to remember. Like, we can rule the universe or something wrong that, right? Like, we can do it. We can live forever. Like, they're obsessed with gaining more and more power. Like, at first you think it's about studying and getting all the answers, but Zarkon has kind of twisted it into we can rule. You know what I mean? So it's like it's kind of like they both twisted it into something that it shouldn't be, and Alfor is the only one that sees that. Like, look at what you've done, you know. And I really like how Zarkon then calls out Alfor, saying, you know, you're only one part of Voltron. I'm the leader. Listen to me. And I feel like, again, that really plays into how interesting the dynamic is with what Voltron really is. It's a team effort. It is a group. You cannot be Voltron without every part. So for Zarkon to just completely dismiss that and say, you're only one part of it, you can't hold us back, it's just interesting to see how much Zarkon fell apart over these years, and Minerva too, obviously, because she is like obsessed. She needs to live on this quintessence. The scene where she was in the bed, like constantly being like you know, like stuttering with Voltron and quintessence, was like really freaky to me, actually. Like her eyes, like how they were like going all over the place. I was like, geez, this is getting really dark. Like, I don't know, like something about that scene was just really, I feel like, darker than most of the other scenes in the entire show. It really, oh my god, it's nuts. So the fact that Zarkon, you know, betrayed Voltron, betrayed everything that he knew just to save his wife's life, you know what I mean? And it's crazy, you know what I mean? Like, these people who loved each other, who thought they got each other, were the reason why the whole universe gets screwed up, because they fell into this darkness because they were just so consumed by it. It's, I don't know, man. It's so many things to think about with this. And the fact that I feel so bad for Team Voltron, for Alfor and the friends, because they really trusted Zarkon. They were like, yes, we will help you save your wife. Thank you for realizing the truth. And they didn't have any ill will or anything. Like, they just did it. And if they had taken a step back to realize that Zarkon was not okay, maybe things could have been different, you know what I mean? But they just trusted their leader, and look at what happened, you know? So that, even that in itself, you can say was the fault of the Paladins, you know what I mean? To say, like, to see what Zarkon was turning into and still trusting him to, I don't know, man. There's just too much to talk about. In regards to yeah, it's really, the thing that's the most confusing to me is definitely the dark creature. Like, what this dark creature is, what it did to them. It killed them, I guess, but more so it possessed them. Like, it filled them with so much of its own presence that, like, those old versions of themselves died, and, like, they were kind of reborn as these darker creatures in these vessels of their memories and bodies. So, in all honesty, I don't think it's like the old them. But they have all the memories of the old them. And honestly, if that really is the case, that would be a really cool parallel with the Shiro clone thing. You know what I mean? Like they're like a vessel of evil, basically, but they have all the memories of what they once were when they were human. And that's kind of what Shiro could be right now, based on our speculation. So that in itself poses a whole new interesting concept. The fact that they died was really surprising to me. And that they came back to life. It's so weird. And I agree with Harrison when I say I don't quite understand why the Allura people were just like, yeah, we'll follow you, Zarkon, who clearly sounds different, has glowing purple eyes, and even though we understand why our planet was evacuated, like, unless Alfor kept it a secret? Like, but why? You know what I mean? Like, why would Alfor not? It was weird, wasn't it? Like, you know what? That's where I'll agree with you, Morgan. Maybe that part should have been fleshed out more, and that shouldn't have been rushed. Because now even I'm like, wait, what? Like, with what's going on with, like, why the Allura were so willing to follow Zarkon after everything that happened. But I guess they didn't know that Zarkon was just going all wacky, so they really trusted their leader. It's so weird. I don't know. That's my full thoughts on it. It's strange, but it's such a great story. It's such a great episode. But I'll admit now I'm a little confused at like what they were saying at the end there. Maybe so is Karan. Maybe that's why, because Karan doesn't know the whole story either. So I don't know.
Yeah, like I think all they needed to do was just have Zarkon say something like Alfor probably told you one thing about why you had to leave and why you had to destroy our planet, but he's always like wanted the portal gone or something like that. That was like the core of why the Galra Empire is so powerful is because of the portal, and he just wanted it gone. Or like they should have just explained that he kind of like manipulated his people into like believing one story over the other, rather than just like. I think they do a really brief thing where he says like Alfor destroyed our planet to the people, and they're all like shocked, even though, as both of you have mentioned, like he kind of must have given them some explanation for why he evacuated the planet. But Greg, what are your thoughts on the end of the flashback?
Yeah, no, I always thought that was interesting, the way that they sort of got everyone to sort of turn on the Alteans, and I guess all of the other nations as well. I mean, I think for me, the thing that was more interesting than anything else is just the fact that he just sort of, they hold the funeral and everything, and he just sort of comes back from being dead, and like there's nothing said about the fact that he was dead, or no questioning or anything like that. Like it's just like, all right, he's back, and he's leading us to sort of take over, everything else, regardless of there being, a reason for it or not. But I mean, other than that, it's still an interesting way that they sort of chose to sort of end, sort of the relationship that all of the paladins had together, and, the whole sending the lions off, which we did know that story already. So I think it would be interesting to know sort of what happened to the other leaders specifically. I mean, obviously they didn't have the lions that helped defend their own sort of, their own sort of worlds. So that would be a interesting side story in itself. But I don't know, for me, I think the ending part of the history, I think it definitely, it works. It gives you an idea of what sort of happened. It's kind of sad, of course, but, it's a tragedy. So it's sort of supposed to be. But, I think it's definitely a good way to sort of cap off the episode, and sort of still want you sort of wondering sort of what's going to happen on now that we actually notice stuff. So I think it's pretty cool that we got it, and I guess in the long run it didn't really take them too long to actually get us to history.
And so one of the big things, obviously the last episode ends with one of the big things being that Zarkon's alive again, but it's had to be because Hagar has got her memories back and is now, I don't know if she'll still go by Hagar or she'll call herself Minerva again, but she now calls Zarkon like husband and has brought him back to life. I don't know if we're meant to interpret anything about the fact that she had to use magic to kind of bring him back. Is that like different than how he was brought back before, or what? But maybe he'll come back and he'll be even more evil, even more cruel, or something like that. But that's the big kind of cliffhanger ending, that like Lotor's in charge, but now Zarkon's back, so what's going to happen? And given that there is an issue between Zarkon and Lotor, there's a immediate kind of conflict as well, maybe explaining why Lotor is keeping some of his own plans a secret, even to his own empire. So I suppose like we're more or less coming to like the end of the discussion here, so I suppose we'll just end it up with just like our kind of final thoughts on like any kind of little random things that we have from the season. My own last few things are just kind of some stuff that I thought was kind of maybe a little bit underdeveloped or not used all that much. Keith being Galra, I was kind of shocked that they just didn't at all attempt to really like touch on that. There was one line where like Keith said, like remember we learned like last time out that like not all the Galra are bad. Maybe that was alluding to the fact that he's Galra too, but I found it kind of weird that this wasn't even brought up, and especially within the first episode where they brought up the idea of like the worlds that they're freeing are kind of being kind of very like, I suppose, prejudiced against Galrans because they're being saved by the Blades of Marmora as well. That was kind of like a dropped plot point almost this season, of just like they brought it up at the start, then the Blades disappeared again, with kind of like what they did during parts of season 2. And then the very last thing I have is just that once again we've kind of got a whole season where we haven't really had much of a mention of Earth. And I get like it's the whole universe that Voltron is the defender of, But I feel that to some degree, like it's weird that like most of our team is people from Earth, and we're not really ever referring back to it all that much. So I'm kind of just waiting for like someone to note that like, oh, all the paladins are from Earth. Why don't we attack the Earth homeworld, Earth, and force them into like a desperate defense of their home planet or something like that. But that may be something they're saving for later. But it remains a thing that like the Kerberos mission initially was to find life in the rest of the universe. Is Earth aware that there are other species still or not? Like, do the paladins' families know where they are or gone? And like, there's a lot of questions just back on Earth of just the fact that like we really just left Earth and just forgot about it, and I think they need to come back to that at some point. But Kelly, what are your kind of, I suppose, just final kind of roundup of little points from this season?
Yeah, I mean, just to go off of the ones that you pointed out, I agree that them dropping the Blade of Malmora thing was kind of weird. Again, like they keep bringing them up and then they disappear. I think they're going to be back for season 4. I actually do. If anything, I still am on the belief that season 4 is just the second half of season 3, so I'm not criticizing it for being like, why did they wait until season 4 to talk about that? I'm like, it's just the second half of season 3, or what it was supposed to be, So, if the Blade of Malmora don't show up in season 4, then I'm like, well, what was the point of that first part? But yeah, I have a feeling they're going to be back or whatever, and they're going to talk about that again. Keith being Gara, yeah, still weird that that was a whole thing and then it wasn't a whole thing. I'm always going to be bitter about that. I always thought that was one of the weirdest decisions they made, story-wise. Going back to Earth, yeah, that's definitely a big one. As to why they didn't go back, or like why they haven't been like talking about it's weird that they haven't been talking about it, but I get why they haven't gone back. There's too much to do, because at first I think they were going to go back when once they got Team Voltron working out and everything, and that they started really going at it with the rebellion against the other factions of the Galra Empire throughout the universe. But then Prince Lotor showed up, and they were like, oh no, Zarkon has a son. This isn't over. You know what I mean? Like they pretty much thought they were on the track of winning, and I think they would have visited Earth if you know what I mean. I feel like that's what would have happened, but because Prince Lotor showed up, I think that really screwed them over, and they gotta keep doing what they're doing, and maybe never go back. It'll be interesting to see what's going on with Earth, especially since we know that Lance really misses Earth. You know what I mean? And like what that could mean for his character and his arc and everything like that. As for other little things, I really did like the leg joke. I don't know why. I just thought that was a cute thing to do, is to allude back to the leg thing again with Hunk. Just because I think they knew that was such a standout line in the first season. They're like, we gotta like put that into the season 3 references. References. Oh, I just heard myself echo. Oh, it's annoying. The helmet that Zarkon gave baby Allura was Prince Lotar's helmet from the original anime, the original show. That was like the exact same helmet that like Prince Lotar wore in that show. I thought that was a good Easter egg. And obviously Sven. Wait, can we just talk about Sven's death, or maybe death? I don't know. And how that was a huge reference to the stupidity of the English dub of the original Go Lion show. Like, if you don't know, like, Sven is obviously just the English name for the character of Shiro in the original Go Lion anime that Voltron is based on. Voltron is just the edited English version of Go Lion. And there was a part where Hagar attacks Sven, I think, and Shiro, and he dies. Like, Shiro dies in the original show, you know what I mean? We don't know if that's going to happen in this show. That may not necessarily happen, but Shiro dies in that show. But in the English dub, they do it in a way where they censor out like the blood, and they're like, we could find a doctor on this other planet. Okay, take me there quickly. Like that. So like, I think when Sven was dying and he was like, I'll be okay, just take me to a space hospital, I think that was a reference to that. I don't know. Like, they were just poking fun at how stupid that scene was for the American version, because there's a whole funeral scene in the anime, in the Go Lion anime. They just pretend like Sven is in the hospital for the rest of Voltron. It's the stupidest thing. So nice Easter eggs. I like how this season really took the time with its Easter eggs. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got. Oh yeah, and Slav wasn't annoying because he wasn't our Slav, so that's good. I don't really have too many other thoughts. I think that's it. There's just so much going on. I'm really excited to see season 4. Just yeah.
Harrison, what's your kind of quick roundup of other points that we haven't really covered just yet?
Well, I can't think of anything new per se, but to go off what you said, like, I actually forgot about the Blades of Marmora until you brought them up. I was like, oh yeah, they exist. Those are characters. Whoops. So I do hope that that's going to be like a season 4 thing. Like, if it's not, then it's going to be an issue. Like, I think I'm kind of agreeing with Kelly here. Like, it's just one season split in half. So I hope like stuff with Pidge and Matt and comes back and stuff like that. And it's going to be all season 4 stuff with the whole, and also Keith with Gara. Like, again, I forgot that was a thing. And I was like, oh yeah. Like, I remember halfway through watching this, like, oh yeah, he's half Gara. Like, or Galra, not Gara. But so I was just like, yeah, that's a thing. I forgot about that. They should probably address that. And so, like, again, I'm assuming it's going to be season 4 stuff. Like, I have full confidence in the show that they're going to address that. Now, if they don't address it in season 4, we'll get to that then when we have, in October when that happens. But as of right now, I don't think I can think of anything else on side note. I just really enjoyed this season. It was just very well done. It held focus. It was quick. It was to the point. It accomplished what it needed to accomplish, and I hope season 4 is the same way.
Mm-hmm. And Greg, your kind of last quick roundup of points that we haven't touched on yet.
I think you guys covered most of them. But I guess the only other thing that I was thinking of was, I guess at the end of the Netflix thing, they do play like a season 4 like teaser trailer, I guess you would call it. But I don't know. For me, it didn't really seem like a real sort of teaser sort of trailer for the next season. It didn't really seem like it indicated anything too new to me. That was the only extra thing that I can think of.
Yeah. The official kind of season 4 trailer that came out was kind of, somewhat generic, just like, okay, more Voltron, continuation, season 4. We got the date, obviously, October 13th, not too far away. There have been other trailers. Obviously, the fandom is prone to freak out about leaks when they're not actually leaks, and that, like, I think in Korea, an official trailer came out that aired on the channel that airs Voltron. And
that was an official trailer?
Yeah, the one with the kind of reunion moment was an official Korean trailer. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then they gotta stop. That's still stupid, though. Like, they can't. Well, if it's official and that's allowed to be like seen by the public, then of course it's not a problem. But like half the time, people film these things and post them like, "Oh, look what I found," and like it looked like really like you weren't supposed to look at it. Like I thought it was from a Studio Murtor or something like that. Like
no, that's two stories being mixed up. The Studio Murtor thing is from like April, like months ago. And completely different stuff, like concept art stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, there have been cases where other countries accidentally show trailers that you're not supposed to see yet. But if it was Korea's mistake and not like someone like leaking something that's not supposed to be seen yet, then okay, that's fine. All right, that's not that bad. But like half the time we don't know these things. Like they don't explain where these sources come from. The last thing I want to do is get any companies in trouble. So I don't get why people share these things without knowing like where it's from. If it doesn't look official, don't share it unless like you do it privately with your friends or something. I don't know. That's my feelings on the matter.
Yeah, that's the Tumblr problem with anything like this that happens. It just gets like shared around, reacted, and no one actually is like, here's where it actually came from. And then when you actually find the source, it's like someone, I think from Korea, who happens to also speak English, who kind of posted about like, okay, look, here's the situation. There is a like specific DreamWorks channel in Korea that aired season 3 on TV, and in between two specific episodes they aired this season 4 kind of little trailer that's different than the one we have. And it also I think happened to happen that they had like screens set up at some sort of convention that was like running this channel all day, and I think that's where it was filmed on, but it was actually on TV as well. So yeah, context is kind of important, and you can sort of see what happened, and that like a lot of people mixed up the issue with the leaks from before that were actually stuff that Studio Mir apparently got in trouble about with this one, which wasn't actually an official leak. But it's that we're not going to talk about it here because it is a little bit spoilery, but you know, we'll have time to potentially do a season 4 predictions kind of discussion at some point, and of course we will cover season 4 on another podcast in October as soon as we can. But yeah, that's more or less the discussion here for season 3. As you can see from all of our thoughts here, overall very positive. Found a very different kind of type of show and reaction to season 2, and I think around the fandom it's been the same. It's been very positive reaction to season 3. There's going to be tons of theories thrown around the place about Lotor interpretations of the backstory, the whole Shiro stuff, and that's just exciting to look forward to as we lead up to the season. And like once the speculation's done, we'll be straight into the build up for season 4. So a lot to be excited about, and this is potentially where the new format will show some of its kind of good side as well, and that it's just like we had this really cool bunch of 7 episodes and now we're building up to the other 6, so it'll be fun. But yeah, that has been the podcast for season 3. It's been myself, Kelly, Greg, and Harrison. Thanks for listening to this podcast, and bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.